Welcome in. It is week 10 of the NFL season. This is make or break time for a lot of teams this week. Let me turn this down a little bit for you guys. It is make or break time for a lot of teams this week. There's some teams kind of floating in the middle of the pack, some teams that are playing for wildcard games, some teams that are looking to do something this week, and if they don't win, they're not going anywhere. San Francisco is the one team that I'm looking at right now, right? Is that for me, San Francisco is the one team that I'm looking at this week, and I'm going, hey, is this a team that has anything in the tank? Can they get anything done? And they're going up against a big opponent this week in the Los Angeles Rams. That's going to be a huge one for me. Simply because I fully expected the Rams to be much better than what they already are. But yeah, there's a few games on the slate here. The Vikings are pretty much done. If they don't win today, they're done as well. Carolina, you could say the same thing about. They just signed Cam Newton to try to figure out what they can do. But the reality is that the Panthers are up against the Cardinals and have to run PJ Walker out there today. So that's going to be a big one. I would say the Eagles are probably out of it already. I mean, we're looking at a lot of teams that just, it's do or die this week. Seattle's the same way. I know they've been without Russ Wilson. They could potentially make a run. I just don't see them as a very good team right now. So welcome in. It is week 10 of the NFL season. Thank you guys for tuning in. My name is Joe, better known as NFLosophy on Twitch and on Twitter. So thank you guys for coming in. This is our pregame show. For anybody that's here that's not been here before, thank you for coming in, first and foremost. Second of all, welcome in. Today is going to be going specifically through the matchups of all of the games today. So for me, let me turn this guy down. Yeah, so for me, this is the show for us, right? So this is the show where I get excited about, because I actually get to go through specifically all the things that I love about every single game. So on Tuesdays, we typically do a recap show, and we recap the week before. Never logged on, welcome back. Appreciate you coming in. NFL Sunday, let's go. So for me, it's all about it's all about the matchup. So we'll recap everything that we saw on Tuesdays from the week before. On Thursdays, we do a quick little preview of every game. And then on Sundays, we actually dig into the matchups a little bit deeper than what we did on, we'll dig into the really good games. And then from there, we'll go and we'll see what specifically is important about each game. You know, like they put on like the keys to the game or whatever. I'll give you the real keys to the game. Not the like high level, you got to run the ball 20 times and all that BS that they put on the screen, right? So welcome in. Thank you guys for coming in. It is Sunday morning. Man, I'm excited about this one. November is where football is played, man. It starts to get cold. This is where the good separate from the bad, because in 3 or 4 weeks, we're going to have a pretty good idea of, once we get into December, we're going to have a good idea of who's for real and who's not. There's still a little bit of fluctuation. We've got a pretty good idea now, but there's still a couple teams that always surprise, right? Somebody that's floating around 500 that ekes into the wild cards. If you think about like the Washington last year, they were one of the teams that were able to kind of come up with something at the end of the year and kind of squeeze into the playoffs. So for me, I'm looking at this week and going, all right, who wins, who loses, who is that sleeper team that's going to come? There's always one, right? There's always one that's floating around 500, maybe a little bit less. Who's got something left in the tank to be able to make a run towards the playoffs? So, huge week. This is the week where it all changes, and we're all still kind of getting used to having 17 weeks, right? So, or 17 games, 18 weeks, right? So we've got an extra. Even though we're about halfway through, we've got kind of an extra game in there for teams to be able to flip it. And in an extended season, injuries become a bigger part of it, right? Because injuries and depth. And I think that's something that we don't talk about enough, is the depth of rosters, because we haven't talked about it to this point, because I mean, there's been a good amount of injuries. Every team has multiple players on injured reserve. And players out, but we're not to the point where most teams aren't struggling because they just don't have guys available. There are some teams that are out there that are like that. The Bucks potentially have 3 or 4 big players on offense out today, which could be problematic for them. Luckily, they're playing Washington, so we'll see how that stacks up. But I mean, it's just one of those things where we don't talk about depth enough. It's one of the things that separates the best teams from good teams. And you can look at the Bucks last year. They lost Vita Vea, and Nunez Roches was able to come in and play pretty well for a little bit last year. They were able to rotate some guys in and out of that interior on the defensive line to be able to still win games and then get into the playoffs and then be successful. Because once they got into the playoffs and then Vita Vea got healthy, that was a major turning point for them. Vita Vea, if they don't have Vita Vea last year, they end up losing that game. So injuries do play a big part from here on out, and depth of the roster. So we've seen it a little bit here and there. Like the Cowboys are pretty banged up. They've had DeMarcus Lawrence and Randy Gregory on injured reserve for a long amount. And they've had to figure out some things. Luckily they've got some guys that have stepped in at defensive end and been able to rush the passer. So Micah Parsons has been amazing there, right? So depth is a huge thing going forward. So we'll start talking about that. Maybe not this week, maybe a little bit this week, but we'll start talking about it next week, because as we get into week 11, 12, 13, depth really becomes a big deal. I do like that we have the longer injured reserve. We have the long injured reserve, the short injured reserve, and that's going to be a big factor coming in, because that short injured reserve is going to, and I wish they would designate, right? Like I wish every injury report said short-term injured reserve, short-term IR, long-term IR, because they're two totally different things. So long-term IR means you're out for the season, you're done. Short-term IR means you're out, 3 to 4 weeks at minimum, and then you can come back. So like CMC was put on short-term IR, as everybody is aware. So, just one of those things where I think it's super important that we distinguish between those two things, that we distinguish about depth and the importance that it's going to have. And then we'll get into all the matchups. So what teams are in purgatory, what teams are going to climb out, what teams are going to fall. And we'll try to pick a sleeper team to look out for based on everything that we know. Who basically we're looking for the one team whose record has underperformed how good they really are, or who is potentially injured and banged up a little bit, that's going to get healthy going forward and should be much better, provided they actually get healthy. But that's something that's going to be hard to do. So welcome in. All right, let's jump into it. So NFL news. OBJ obviously to the Rams. We talked about that on Thursday. For that particular one, he is going to play tomorrow night. Robert Woods out for the season. That's a major one. Tore his ACL in practice on Friday. He got hurt, felt like he sprained it, went and practiced the rest of practice, said it hurt a little bit, and then they gave him an X-ray or a MRI, and then they're like, yeah, you tore your ACL, and now he's out for the season, which is kind of crazy for me, just kind of insane. Which you got to be pretty tough to do that. That is a major blow to them. OBJ coming in was kind of nice to have, right? But with Robert Woods out, it changes everything of what OBJ was going to be doing, what he was going to be asked to do. Robert Woods is such a big piece of that offense, because he's their fly sweep, their jet sweep, their motion, their play from a few different positions, inside, outside, excuse me, inside, outside, and then run block. One of the biggest run blockers in the league in terms of quantity of how much he's asked to do it and quality of actually being able to run block. So that'll change that. And is that something that OBJ is going to be asked to do? And is it something that he's going to be willing to do? It's going to be pretty fascinating to watch that whole thing play out. OBJ should be getting the targets now. I don't think we have to worry about that. I don't think we have to worry about him getting the targets that he was hoping he would get at this point. Van Jefferson now becomes a key player in the offense again. I don't know how that offense looks going forward. It's going to be interesting to watch that play out on Monday night. So yeah, just even the littlest things can matter whenever it comes to a player being in or out, right? So is it a big deal that you're replacing Robert Woods with OBJ? Absolutely. And it's probably not for the reasons that most people think. Sure, OBJ is going to be fine, and it's a little bit of a step down in terms of wide receiver ability, I think. But I think the importance to that offense is OBJ now has to step up. Sounds like he's going to return some punts this week as well. That they've considered doing that. If they're struggling at wide receiver, I'm not sure that I would run OBJ out there at punt returner for right now, at least. But luckily they're playing the 49ers, which um, should theoretically be a W for them, right? I think they're favored by 4.5. They were favored by 4 earlier this morning whenever I looked. So we'll see. We'll talk about anything you guys want to talk about. So fantasy, real life football, whatever you guys want to talk about, throw it in the chat. We'll discuss as we go. And it's going to be a good morning. I think it's going to be a good Sunday. There's some not so great matchups on this that I'm not all that interested in, and we'll probably blow through. And then there's some really good matchups that we'll spend a little bit more time on. So welcome in. It is Sunday morning of week 10 of the NFL season. My name is Joe, NFLosophy on Twitch, Twitter, and I should actually start saying YouTube and Instagram too. Basically, NFLosophy across all of them except TikTok. I'm too old to be doing TikTok, guys. I'm not, that's not my scene. I've got a baby on the way. So that my daughter will have TikTok, not me. All right, so let's get into it. And by the way, I may turn I won't be able to turn it on stream. I don't think I'm allowed to. But I may turn the F1 race on whenever it comes on too. I don't know how many of you guys are F1 fans out there, but after watching, I am one of those that Drive to Survive on Netflix. It caught me and it's got its hold on me. I grew up in Kentucky, so NASCAR was a big thing in Kentucky. Not that big for me. I was not interested. My oldest brother was interested, loved NASCAR. I was like, they just drive in circles all day. Now all of a sudden I know who the drivers are for I know who all of the drivers are for F1, and now it's fascinating because I actually know the personalities and I'm invested in the people, not just the cars and the teams. So we may keep that on in the background a little bit. Bandoozle, welcome in. Do you think Dallas lost because they bought into their own hype? If so, would you think -8.5 is a little bit high? So we'll talk about it. I think there's a couple of things that happened last week, and I actually think that not all of them were specific to Dallas. More left turns. What's the Jeff Dunham and his Bubba Jr. and how much he loved more left turns. So for Dallas last week, I think Dallas, that game every week is weird, right? Last week particularly was weird for a lot of teams. And there are every season one team has what we call a Murphy's Law game. Everything that can go wrong will go wrong. And that last week, that was it for Dallas, right? And it happens. That's why it's so hard to go 16-0 in the NFL, is because teams are just so close in terms of talent and coaching that any little turn can make it go. Whether it's and fumble luck and interceptions and turnovers are so fickle that it's really, you can't predict them, right? They're very random. And so for me, it's last week was everything that can go wrong will go wrong. So I think the score was bloated. I do think Denver played much better than the Cowboys last week, but I think there's a couple reasons for that. One is, and we'll get into it a little bit deeper, but one is they're getting they got healthy in the secondary last week. I think that's big. Jerry Jeudy changes the dynamic of that offense. It's rare that one player can change the dynamic of an offense, but Jerry Jeudy is when they put him back at the top of the depth chart in terms of wide receivers, it pushes everybody down a click in the depth chart. And I think that's big for them because they don't have good enough wide receivers to get open against number one corners. But when you put Jerry Jeudy, he can get open against the number one. Those other guys are good enough to get open against number twos and number threes. That's huge for how they run their offense. That's huge for their quarterback because Teddy Bridgewater isn't the hey, let's take aggressive throws into tight windows type. He can hit open guys. And I think there's a couple of things like that. And then the other thing is I think the offense was off last week. So the Cowboys actually had a few opportunities, and Dak either missed them, or when Dak hit the throws, the Cowboys were dropping footballs all over the place. His wide receivers did not help him out. They decided they just didn't want to go with the run. I didn't watch it close enough specifically because I wasn't all that interested in a 30-0 game 4 minutes into with 4 minutes left in the fourth quarter. So for me, like it felt like one of those games where they just got so far away from the run that they just weren't interested in it. And by the time they got down 14-0 and started pressing, it had already slipped away. And then a couple bad bounces, couple turnovers, and like I've said before, Dak typically has 2 to 3 throws a game where you're like, what the hell, dude? What were you thinking? And it's funny because I talked about it for a good like 6 weeks and nothing really happened. And then last week I didn't mention it at all, and then all of a sudden it kind of went bad for him, right? He has those 2 or 3. If they fall to the ground, nobody really cares, nobody really notices. Last week they ended up in the defense's hands. So really interesting matchup last week. I highly underestimated Judy's return as well as that secondary getting healthy, and it's something that I won't do again because I do think it's very, very important for him. So I think they're going to be fine going forward. They still have a little bit of they need to be on their A game today because the Falcons have proven that they're not a pushover. If they don't come to play, the Falcons will take them to into the fourth quarter. Now, Dallas is miles ahead of the Falcons, but the Falcons have shown that they can push good teams all the way to the end. They've done it with the Bucks. They beat the Saints last week, and they're kind of figuring out this offense. Arthur Smith has done a really good job last few weeks. So yeah, Austin. No, we got to talk about Buffalo, or we got to talk about Baltimore, Miami, man. Sorry. We'll be quick about it, Austin. All right, let's go ahead and let's go ahead and cross out NFL news. We're already a little bit behind, so I do want to come up. All right. We'll talk a little bit more, Bandoozle. We'll talk a little bit more about Dallas and the Falcons game here in a little bit. So, Baltimore, Miami. What the hell happened? Going back and looking at this game, I am fascinated by Baltimore. Baltimore looked like they walked into this game thinking that they were just going to trample Miami. They were not prepared. I don't think they were prepared from a coaching standpoint. I don't think they were prepared from a player standpoint. It was like, hey, it's Miami. We're fine. And I talked about it in the pregame show that they can't just do that because Brian Flores is a damn good coach, specifically on defense. And that's where they struggled. And we also talked about Lamar the week before struggled a good amount in terms of throwing the ball and his accuracy with passes. And that happened again on Thursday night. So now all of a sudden you've got Miami bringing blitzes off the edges everywhere on pretty much every play, which is something that that is fairly normal for them to do. They just did it to a greater degree. And with more aggressiveness on Thursday night, and Baltimore just was not prepared in the least. And I was fascinated by that because it really seemed like Baltimore was already looking ahead. I wonder if, let me guess, if I'm guessing, there's probably a big matchup next week for Baltimore because it felt like they were looking ahead to somewhere. No, not really. They're playing Chicago next week. That's not a big matchup. It just felt like they were looking ahead, right? Like that they were, and there's also something to be said that they played Minnesota into OT. I remember reading a stat that teams that go into OT, they have a higher percentage of chance of losing the next game, especially on a short week, or coming off of a short week. So yeah, that probably played into it a little bit. They just couldn't get any offense going, really, the Ravens. And that's a big testament to Miami's scheme. I don't think Miami had the players to stop, but the scheme that they had did stop the Ravens. So Big up to Brian Flores, man. That was a hell of a game plan on his point. So specifically, what they did is they wanted to bring pressure off the edges and corner blitzes, and then rotate coverages in. They have good enough. They have a good enough secondary to do that. Their front Miami's front line is not good. Their linebackers aren't great, but their secondary we've talked about all season is pretty good, and those guys can fly. And instead of just sending them out in coverage every time, they brought them everywhere, and the Ravens weren't prepared for it. And they never adjusted to it. That was the weird thing. And now it doesn't help that Marquise Brown was targeted like 13 times for 6 receptions and 40 yards or something like that. Like when you're throwing the ball to Marquise Brown that much, he's got to catch it. If he makes 2 or 3 catches out of the targets that he missed, that's a whole different ball game. We're having a different conversation today. So again, the Ravens have fallen victim to Marquise Brown's hands this year. It's been a couple of times now that he's dropped a few big touchdowns. There was one against the Lions, weirdly enough, that if he caught that, then they don't even have to bother. There was 2 against the Lions, if I remember correctly. That if he catches those, that the whole narrative of that game changes. Like there's a few games where he just I feel personally victimized by Bakersfield's hands. I think it was 3 against. It was definitely 2. I definitely remember there was one in the end zone, one inside the 5. They were both bombs, Austin. But yeah, that is if he catches footballs, they're going to be hard to beat. If he doesn't catch footballs and they try to target him 13 times, now you're just taking reps out of the offense and you're making it hard for them to do what they want to do otherwise. And then, man, that running game, I'm so surprised that they did. Where's Tyson, man? I liked Tyson earlier in the year, and now all of a sudden they want to run the ghost of Le'Veon Bell out there. I don't understand it, man. I don't like what they're doing with their run game. There's a lot, and we talk about it every week. It's a weird matchup. The Ravens could win any game by 40 or lose any game by 40, and this was one of those that were there. That's what I'm saying, Austin. Like, I have no idea why they don't. Like, he looked like he had some good juice, had some good footwork, some solid vision. Like, I would want to see Tyson out there. I'm surprised that they never even gave him a shot. Again, we have to trust the coaching staff and that they see these guys every single day. But we benefit as um, as viewers, as NFL fans, where all we see is what they put on the field on Sunday or on game day, right? And there's a benefit to that because the jogging corpse of Devontae Freeman is truly haunting. It really is. It really is. We're past Halloween, but he still looks like a ghost out there. All of them do. All of their running backs that they continue to run out. I just don't understand why they haven't given Tyson a chance out there, man. And for anybody that didn't get the joke, instead of Hollywood Brown, it's more like Bakersfield Brown. Whenever he doesn't show up on a Sunday or on a Thursday, I guess in this case. Yeah, the offensive line hasn't. They played well for 2 or 3 games there in a stretch, and then they didn't play well. They haven't played well in the last couple of games, so that's kind of where that goes back and forth. They're very matchup dependent because of the way that they play, and because of how teams have to figure out how they want to play Lamar. But they're going to be hard to pinpoint the rest of the year. I want to see Tyson in there. I think Tyson would be much, much better. On the end zone, one inside the 5 and one against the Lions. Yeah. I remember. Okay, yeah. The one inside the 15 was on the left sideline was the one I forgot. So yeah, that was I mean, kudos to Miami. They're still not moving out of my top 5 draft pick. I can tell you that much. When we do tiers on Tuesday, they're still not there. I still don't think there's another team. Maybe we drop Washington down, and move maybe like the Giants up or something like that, depending on how this week goes. But doesn't seem possible. So yeah, I mean, like I said, every week it's matchups on matchups, and the game plan coming in decides the outcome 75-80% of the time. The other 20% is weird stuff that happens, some mix of weird stuff that happens. And sometimes some teams are just so talented that they get away with whatever they want to do. Sometimes it's rare that stuff like that happens. But, and there's a couple of games where decisions being made before the game are going to be major players. So fascinating game simply because it turned out completely the opposite. I thought Baltimore was going to win by 30. I thought this was going to be one of those nights where we're like, okay, it's halftime, I can go to bed, because it just wasn't even close, and Baltimore just didn't come prepared. So we'll see how that goes. All right, that's Baltimore, Miami. Austin, apologies. Get them next time. Get them next time, right? But hey, the fun thing about Thursday night, whenever your team plays on Thursday night, is Sunday is way less stressful. Like, to be able to just sit back and watch whatever games you want to watch and not actually have to be a fan or stress about a game is always good. There was a point in there that I was going to make, and I forgot what it was. There was something specific I was talking about in there. I don't know. Maybe it'll come back to me later. All right. Can definitely move on without remembering. Hopefully you had enough drinks that you don't remember much of the night, Austin. All right. Buffalo, New York Jets. Not going to spend a lot of time here. All right. What I will say about the Jets is, and we talked about this a little bit on Thursday. I don't think that this is I'm not going to overreact to Buffalo losing to Jacksonville last week. One of those weird games where they came in, they looked like they were ready to just kind of coast in that game, and then they kind of figured out around halftime, something's wrong. And then by the time that they got to halftime, like, Jacksonville was like, hey, we can actually win this. And Jacksonville was playing really well. Jacksonville's defensive line played pretty well, specifically Josh Allen on the edge for Jacksonville. And then Josh Allen for Buffalo had one of his poorer games. Like I said, every quarterback has one or two, maybe three games. The best quarterbacks in the league will have one or two bad games in a season, like bad where they're just not hitting anything. Brady had one earlier in the season, and they still ended up winning by 30. I think it was Chicago. I think it was against Chicago. He was bad early, and then they just really didn't have to do very much on offense because the defense had stepped up. So, like, every good quarterback has one or two bad games a season. And how teams do in those particular games, Dak had one last week. How they do in those games determines a lot of the win-loss record on a week-to-week basis. I think Josh Allen had a bad game for Buffalo last week. I think Jacksonville, it was kind of the perfect storm. Jacksonville's defensive line had a good game. The Bills' O-line did not have a good game. They didn't seem prepared for what they needed to do, and they didn't adjust in the game. And then Josh Allen, the quarterback, had 3 turnovers by himself. And if he does that by himself and they can't move the football otherwise, they couldn't get the run game going. They were getting pressured in the pass game. Whenever that happens, it's going to be very hard for them to win games, even against bad teams. And Jacksonville did just enough. CJ Beathard comes in, throws a couple nice throws. One of them should have been a TD, but wasn't. He had a beauty of a throw from the middle of the field that should have been a touchdown. So Jacksonville should have actually won by more. I'm not going to overreact to that because I think that was just Buffalo's weird game. I need to see more evidence before I'm like, oh my God, we have way more evidence that Buffalo is a good football team than we do not being a good football team. For the Jets, on the other hand, they seem to be trending up, right? Like Mike White hype. Everybody gets it. Like everybody's talked about it. Mike White, he's the quarterback. Zach Wilson may or may not get his job back whenever he gets healthy. He may actually be healthy now, and they're just using it as an excuse. Who knows? Like, who knows? Those coaches know what they want to do. And we talked about it on Thursday. The one thing I will say, choo-choo Mike White. I mean, you can get on the Mike White hype train, but there's a couple things I want to call out here. These two things can be true at the same time. Zach Wilson can be a better quarterback and more talented than Mike White. it can also be true at the same time that this particular offense works better with a quarterback like Mike White or like Josh Johnson, guys that get the ball out on time, that know that it's going to come out at specific times within their drops. That's a big thing for this offense. And when that happens, the offense actually looks pretty competent whenever they're doing it. So for me, I think that it's the offense has looked better with Mike White. I do not think Mike White is a better quarterback than Zach Wilson, or that Zach Wilson can be. Zach Wilson's got to learn to get rid of the football, get the ball out on time, stop trying to hold on to the ball and take the big play. He also wasn't seeing the field particularly well. So there's a lot going on there, right? Now, does that mean that they have a shot today? Nah. So the other point that I want to make here is that new quarterbacks tend to do fairly well whenever they first come in and play, right? And the reason for that is there's no tape on them. You don't necessarily know exactly what they like to do, and what they're good at and what they're bad at, because basically what defenses tend to do is they'll look at a quarterback specifically and say, okay, is he more accurate throwing to his left or throwing to his right? Is he the type of guy that holds on to the ball, or is he the type of guy that gets it out quickly? Does he like to take deep shots? Does he throw better over the middle, or does he throw better to the perimeter? And in those 4 or 5 things, they can kind of figure out like what is he comfortable doing? Take away the things that he's comfortable doing, especially as a young guy, and he's probably going to fall apart. And given Mike White some time and defenses some time to actually see him, expect a little bit of a taper off. It's probably today because Buffalo's defense is really good and they can do a bunch of different things. It's like you know, the Jacksonville offense didn't do anything against Buffalo last week. They just happened to get the offense happened to get the ball in advantageous situations in positive territory where they were able to kick some field goals. So it's not like they did a ton on offense, Jacksonville. So plus 13 feels about right for this one. The Bills have generally, when they've played bad teams, they have generally smashed them from week to week. I think who was it? The Texans, it was 40-0 against the Texans, which was a huge one. They were 43-21 against Washington, 35-0 against Miami. Even against KC, they were 38-20. Miami was 26-11. So this line they would have covered in every game other than basically Jacksonville, Tennessee, and Pittsburgh, if you put it like that. So do I think that the Jets can come in and cover this? Absolutely. Do I think they're going to? Probably not. So for me, I've got to go with Buffalo in this particular game to cover. This does go against my rule of where we go. So that's a loss. This does go against my rule of picking a team that is a home dog by more than 10 points. Because it typically, whenever this happens, it's like whenever a home team is a dog by 2 touchdowns, I think they rarely cover, or I think the away team rarely covers. So for this particular one, I'm going against that rule. I do think that Buffalo is just that much better than the New York Jets. I don't think Buffalo is going to struggle up front against this defensive line. The Jets have an okay defensive line. It's not great, but it's good enough. I don't think the offensive line struggles again. I think they got a wake up call last week. So good for them. They got a wake up call last week. Hey, you got to come to play every single week or you can get beat by bad teams. Hopefully that's the same thing for Baltimore, right, Austin? Sorry, Austin's probably like, I'm out, bro. All right. Yeah, I'm taking Buffalo and minus 13. Sorry, dude. Sorry. I got to get my shots in whenever they can. Look, here's the thing. Whenever Washington actually makes it a game today, against the Bucks, I think you can, even if they don't win, right? Because there's no reason that Washington should play with the Bucks today. However, this is the type of team that can do it. Because they're not gonna rush. They're not gonna rush Tom Brady. All right, so here are the things that you have to do to beat the Bucks, right? And I was actually texting with some folks about this last night. Here's what you have to do against the Bucks. You can't blitz them. You just cannot blitz Tom Brady. Everybody knows that. If you're gonna get pressure, you got to get it from the inside. Jonathan Allen, one of the best pass rushers from the inside in the NFL. He may actually be the best defensive lineman on Washington's football team. And I know they got Chase Young. I know they got Montez Sweat. Don't really care. John Allen is a beast inside. So something to watch out for there. He'll probably get Ali Marpet. I would expect them to move him around a little bit, put him over top of the right guard where he's probably going to be a little bit more successful, because if you can get pressure up the middle against Brady, definitely makes it a little bit harder. So you got to get pressure up the middle. You can't blitz them. You got to keep them from hitting the big plays, right? Because between Evans, Godwin, Gronk, and I get it, there's some of these guys are out, but between these types of players, Evans, Godwin, Gronk, AB, those type of guys, they can stretch the field, and you can't let them have those big plays. That whole offense is built on big plays. Whenever whenever you play this team and they don't have a Gronk, they don't have an AB, they potentially don't have a Godwin. It sounds like Godwin's going to go today. I fully expect Godwin to go today. And now they've got to play Brashad Perryman out there. They've got to play Tyler Johnson out there. Tyler Johnson's played pretty well in backup, in kind of a mop up / backup role while AB's been out. Scotty Miller. I don't know if Scotty's fully back yet. Let me see. Scotty Miller was supposed to be back for this game, and I never saw if he was actually back or not. Give me one. So I do want to check that. So whenever you've got guys like that, you have to be able to stop that against the Bucks. You cannot let them have those downfield throws because their whole offense is built off of it. Washington, as bad as the secondary has been, is kind of uniquely situated to be able to do this. They can get pressure with their front four. I think Chase Young can beat Donovan Smith. I think that's going to be a matchup to watch today. And then the other thing is, Scotty was not activated. Okay. So it was possible that Scotty Miller was going to be activated today, but it sounds like he's not going to be. And then the other thing is if you can block the Bucks up front, you can attack the secondary. And the Washington offensive line is pretty good. They get Scherf back today, which is huge. It's weird whenever Adam Schefter tweets specifically about one individual player, and I saw that he was tweeting about Scherf coming back and how they're 0-16 or something without him, and they have a 500 win percentage with him. Like, it's okay, cool. It's more than that, but it is great that Scherf is back for them. That's going to be huge. And so that's going to make it harder on that front line. The Bucks are going to have to figure out ways to get pressure. And if the Washington offense figures out that they can run to the edges, that as long as they get away from Vita Vea, they can run on the Bucks. And we've been saying that all year, and a couple teams have tested it, and it's worked out for them. This team can be run on. It's just there's not a lot of teams that have tried. So is it probably the best way to go about it? No, but I do think that you've got to sprinkle in some of those edge runs to be able to balance out what the Bucks are trying to do on defense against you. Because if you can get to the edges, now all of a sudden those edges are playing a little bit tighter, a little bit slower. Now all of a sudden your offensive line can block a little bit lower and Heineke can go up top. The problem is that Washington doesn't necessarily have the greatest of playmakers out there. Logan Thomas is out, which is a big one. De'Ami Brown, I think he's questionable today. They're all, they've got Terry McLaurin, who is going to be able to get up there. Never logged on. Chicago actually ran okay. Right, exactly. Chicago ran against them. Who was the last team there was somebody else that they were like, they figured out late in the game that they were like, oh, we can, I think we, New Orleans. New Orleans was able to run on the edge. New Orleans ended up only having like 30 rushing yards or something like that. Like 28 of them came off the tackles. And then the rest of the runs were like negative for negative yardage inside. And I once Washington figures that out and then they block it up and leave extra blockers in to take some shots because that's what Heineke can do. Problem is Heineke doesn't have the best arm. Like we like to talk about how he's a gunslinger and everything, but he doesn't really have a cannon for an arm by any means. So if he's able to figure that out and they're able to play that too high, I'm curious if they play the too high. Like if it were me and I'm Washington, I might even play 3 down linemen today. Give me 3 down linemen, 3 linebackers, and invite the run from the Bucks because I don't want them taking shots at my secondary because I know my secondary is not great right now. And the thing is I think Tampa Bay thinks their secondary is better than what it is. I think they feel okay with their secondary, and I still think it's a problem. So, for me, I feel like this is a game where Washington plays it smart. The problem I have is that with Heineke, he put up some okay numbers last year in the playoffs and moved the ball, help the Washington football team move the ball against the Bucks. The Bucks are going to be able to go back to that, and they're going to now have more tape on them. The problem is if this were 10 points, I would probably say Washington covers at 9.5. At 9.5, I don't know. I'm still gonna go Washington covers. Here's the thing. I believe the Bucks are a good football team. I don't believe the Bucks are a good enough football team to put teams away, unless they can do something with the defense to create some chaos. I think if Washington didn't have as good of an offensive line and if Scherf wasn't back, I would say they would absolutely do that. With Scherf back, with a solid offensive line, I don't think the Bucks get as much pressure as they would like. Heineke's going to have a little bit more time to throw, and the Bucks like to play a good amount of zone defense. So I think he's going to have some windows to throw into. I'm gonna go Washington plus the 9.5. 9.5 just feels like too much right now. And it seems like this line was 9 earlier, so it seems like people are betting more on the Bucks, which all right, that's fine. This is a game where I'm keeping an eye on it because if Washington is smart, they could push Tampa Bay into the fourth quarter and keep it close. So I'm fascinated by this game. We'll have to wait and see what they actually run out there because I haven't been particularly fond of Washington's defensive play calling, nor is their offense firing on all cylinders by any means. So we'll see. We'll see. Really, it's one of those sneaky matchups where if you're not looking close enough, this feels like it's going to be an easy blowout, but probably not. So I'll allow, and especially with players out, I think that's why it hasn't moved to 10, right? With AB out, with Gronk out, I think that's one of the reasons why it hasn't moved to 10. I will say one of the positive matchups that the Bucks have is those tight ends, whether it's Brait or Howard or even TJ Hudson. No, Hudson left, right? Hudson went somewhere else. So if it's Howard or Brait, I still think that they have a pretty good advantage over the linebackers of Washington. Though I guess if you think about it, Landon Collins as a safety has been playing at the linebacker position a lot more in recent games, and that's been helping. So yeah, there's a lot of moving parts to this one. If it were, like I said, if it were a larger line, I would feel much comfortable. Like if it were half a point more, I'd feel more comfortable with it. With this particular matchup, I still think I'm going with 9.5. At 9, I don't think I could do it. At 8, I don't think I could do it. 8, I know I couldn't do it. I would be taking the Bucks. Because it's just one of those things where the Bucks are going to be able to get 8 points in, right? Like if they can keep it at 8 points, they'll probably be pretty comfortable with that. All right. Atlanta, Dallas. This is one of the sneakier matchups this week too. So sorry, hit the mute button. So Dallas coming off of a thumping last week from Denver. And we talked about it a little bit based on Bandoozle's questions earlier. Dallas, they had their Murphy's Law game last week. Denver was healthy. Their secondary got healthy. That's big that they have their three corners out there now. I think that's huge for Denver. And I think that was huge for them to get healthy in that particular game against Dallas because you've got to have that good of corner play to be able to get them. Now, Dallas had their shots and Dak missed them, or when Dak hit them, then that just ended up meaning that like when Dak threw it, he was either missing or when he hit, the receivers weren't helping him out at all. Cooper had a big third down drop early in the game that was, I think it was 14-0, and Cowboys were driving, and that third down drop, he was wide open. It hit him in the gut and he just dropped it. And I think that was a big point in the game because if they were able to get down and get points there, I think it changes kind of the complexion of the game. And it's it's not 30-0 going into the last 4 minutes of the fourth quarter. They go down, they get a touchdown, it's 14-7 going into halftime or whatever. And it feels like it's more of a game. Denver didn't do anything special. I think they had a good idea of what the Cowboys wanted to do. Vic Fangio came in with a good game plan and basically said, hey, we know that Dak's going to throw the ball up. Let's play to that and let's see if they actually try to run the ball. And we think we can stop them without having to dedicate extra resources to the run game. And they were able to do that. They were able to do exactly what Fangio did. And again, I think one of the big keys of that game was Terrence Steele over at left tackle was very bad. And I think he was bad enough to kind of wreck the game, which is partly because why Dak was off. I think Dak was just off because he was off, but it was part of the reason why Dak was off, part of the reason why he couldn't get the throws to where he needed them to be. And the offense was a little bit hurried. So we talked about it in our preview show. If I were the Cowboys, I'm playing La'el Collins at left tackle, and I'm putting Steele at right tackle because Steele played all right at right tackle, but La'el Collins has actually played left tackle before. They just threw Steele over there and said, "Hey, good luck," and it did not turn out well for them. So that was a big key to that particular game. And Atlanta, on the other hand, has come into this game and they're playing fairly well, right? They've figured out how to use Cordell Patterson. He is the ultimate Swiss Army knife, and I love how they're using him. They've figured out that Kyle Pitts is probably the best player on the entire team, outside of Matt Ryan, maybe. Matt Ryan was on fire for a few weeks there, had an off week, played pretty well last week, considering the defense that he was up against in the Saints, because that is a really good defense. I thought the Saints would come into that game and play more double coverage on Kyle Pitts. They did put Lattimore on Pitts, and Pitts won for the most part against Lattimore, which just shows how talented he is. So that's something that Dallas is going to have to figure out today. How do they want to go about covering Kyle Pitts? If Dallas thinks that they could put Trayvon Diggs on Kyle Pitts and that it's going to be okay, Dallas is going to have some problems today because this offense can move around. And then we talked about specifically, so with Cordero Patterson, Atlanta can always force you into the wrong personnel based on having Cordero Patterson, right? Because they can call a couple of plays and can alert or can it to different plays where if you say, hey, we're going to guard Cordero Patterson with a cornerback, well, that's fine. They're going to move Cordero Patterson in the backfield, and now they've got numbers in the run game because you've got an extra DB on the field that now has to come in and support the run game. If you put a linebacker in, they're going to run Cordero Patterson out into the slot and say, okay, guard Cordero Patterson with a linebacker or a safety. Safety's not good enough to do it because remember, Patterson was viewed as a wide receiver before this season, and Atlanta is finally using him in multiple roles. So Cordero Patterson is at least as good as a number 3 receiver, if not somewhere between like a 2 and 3 receiver. You try to put a linebacker on him, no shot. It's a matchup advantage every time, and Atlanta's taken advantage of that. Plus some combinations of how they use Patterson and Pitts is helping them to free up Pitts even whenever defenses are trying to key on Pitts. They really need Justin Gage to step up um, while Calvin Ridley is out. Zacchaeus had a good game last week. He stepped up. He kind of played, Zacchaeus really kind of played that Calvin Ridley role of like, hey, we need somebody that can get open quickly off the line of scrimmage and get some space for Matt Ryan to throw to whenever we know that blitzes and pressure is coming. And they did a good job of that. And Zacchaeus has been a big piece of that offense. So something to watch out for. Now, up front, Atlanta offensive line still not very good, but they do a good job with the quick game and keeping in some extra blockers whenever they do want to throw it into the intermediate or deep parts of the field. Matt Ryan is pretty good in the pocket. I do think that Dallas can get some pressure on him today, even without having to blitz. They're still going to be able to play that single high coverage that they love to play. Trayvon Diggs on Justin Gage feels like a waste, but if they feel like they can just put Diggs on Pitts and that's all they need, Diggs is going to have enough time. Diggs had a tough game last week. I think he had a rating against him of 156.3 of passes thrown against him last week. He's very much a boom or bust player, and he's been very, very boom this year. But you are going to have a game or two where he's going to end up getting busted, and it's not like he got beat by Tim Smith or Patrick Smith last week, right? Like it's not like Tim Patrick. Sorry, it's not like he got beat by a phenomenal wide receiver. He got beat by a guy that's got pretty good speed, runs pretty good routes, but has really good size. And he's Pitts is Tim Patrick on steroids. So he better be prepared if he thinks he's gonna be able to handle that one-on-one this week. I like Dallas to win this game. I think Atlanta keeps it close. I think Atlanta has a shot to keep this close. Here's the thing that I've learned. It seems like home field advantage just doesn't exist anymore. I just, for every game that I look at, and it's like, oh, it feels like this team's getting an extra 3 points for being at home. We need to start taking that into consideration. There's nothing about this game that says to me that says Dallas. Well, here's the thing. So the other thing is Dallas has so many receivers that I don't. If they put their foot on the pedal and just throw the ball 60 times, there's no way that Atlanta keeps up with them. As long as they stay away from throwing an AJ Terrell on Atlanta's defense, Dallas should be fine. I just don't know that Dallas is going to keep their foot on the pedal, and I don't know that defense is keyed in enough to be able to beat the Atlanta offense. I think Dallas wins probably by a touchdown, but that's a pretty narrow window. I'm gonna go Atlanta to cover here, though I'm not comfortable with the pick because I do see a situation where Dallas could end up blowing them out. But I'm gonna go Atlanta plus 8.5. Is it still 8.5? Let me make sure before I do this. Yep. Okay. Yep. I'm gonna do Atlanta 8.5. All right. Here we go. What else we got? New Orleans, Tennessee. All right, let me do this real quick. Man, I was really disappointed in New Orleans last week. I didn't think that I thought that Atlanta could have a shot to keep it close. But I did not think that New Orleans would I didn't think that New Orleans would come in with that lackluster of an offense to start the game, and then I thought that the defense would play much better than what it played last week. Last week was the wake up call for me on Atlanta can actually have a good offense. Like Atlanta's offense can be pretty good even against good defenses, which is one of the big reasons why I think that they could move the ball today on Dallas. So New Orleans last week. New Orleans, I think it's important to call out that New Orleans played 3 bad quarters of football, and then all of a sudden in the fourth quarter, they kind of figured it out on offense specifically. I think it took 3 quarters for Peyton to figure out, hey, what exactly do I need to do with Simeon here? And how do I need to use him? And how can I use him against this Falcons defense? And I think they kind of figured it out. They put up 22 points in the fourth quarter. On the other hand, Tennessee last week ended up winning the game on defense. Huge win last week, but let's be real. Tennessee won that game all on defense. They had what? They had 2 pick-sixes, 3 or 4 turnovers. Like Tennessee basically put them in a great spot for that the offense didn't really have to do much. And that's good because the offense didn't actually do that much for Tennessee. They were not effective with Adrian Peterson running the ball. Tannehill was not effective throwing the ball. This is a bad matchup for Tennessee in terms of them having to do what they want to do. Now Julio Jones is on IR, and I've said it all along that I think that for me, Tennessee can get away without having Derrick Henry because Tannehill's been playing okay. He's probably playing better than most people realize, but I do think that they need AJ Brown and Julio Jones out there on the field so that Ryan Tannehill can continue to be effective. Um, it turns out that Julio is now on IR, and we'll see how that goes. That in itself makes me lean towards New Orleans in this. The problem is I don't know if New Orleans can generate enough offense. I was banging on Tennessee's defense, but they've played so much better. They've kind of figured out who they are. Byard has been playing really well over the last, month or so, at safety for Tennessee. They're figuring out how to get pressure up specifically along the defensive line that's been playing very well. New Orleans has a good enough offensive line to block. That defensive line is massive, and Tennessee's going to have to throw the ball in this game. And if you have Marcus Lattimore out there to be able to take away a guy like AJ Brown, and again, this is the thing, right? So teams, whenever they come in and they know that another team has one specific receiver that you need to take away, they have the choice of what they need to do. Hey, we have a lockdown corner, or what could potentially be a lockdown corner in a guy like Marcus Lattimore or Trayvon Diggs or whoever that might be. Do we put that guy on the best receiver and lock him down, and we say, hey, that's the matchup, we're going to leave that alone, and then everything else is going to be built around that? Or do we take our second best guy, put him there, roll a safety over top, give him some help, and know that that guy might get a few catches underneath, but he's not really going to beat us deep? And then we'll take our best guy and put him on somebody else, and then we know that the number one and the number two are going to be mostly locked down for the game. So for me, I tend to lean towards the second one. There are very few lockdown corners. You've got maybe Jalen Ramsey, and I mean that's about it that I would trust to do that all game long. And the Rams don't even trust Jalen Ramsey to do that. And a lot of those guys don't even travel into the slot much. So it's just very hard to ask a corner to do that. So for me, it's just one of those things where, you know, we we have to be able to guess at what these teams are going to do. And I think Lattimore probably just mans up on AJ Brown and they say, hey, go after it, which I think gives Tennessee an opportunity. I don't know that Tennessee is going to be able to run the ball. Tennessee's much better at run blocking than they are pass blocking. Um, Tannehill's okay outside of throwing to guys like AJ and Julio, but he's not great. This is going to be fun for me in that I love Vrabel. I think Vrabel needs to be in consideration for Coach of the Year honors at this point in time. Tennessee's the number one seed in the AFC, and they're winning against big teams, and they just won last week without their biggest offensive threat, right? Probably the most important person to this particular team. Um, and so, because the entire offense, the entire game plan on both offense and defense ran through Derrick Henry. Without Derrick Henry, it's basically taking an entire leg off and forcing them to play. We like to say that sometimes coaches will make other teams play left-handed. Well, eh, taking Derrick Henry out is making him play one-footed, right? Like it's not just one arm; it's an entire leg. So, this is a fun game, man. I'm leaning New Orleans to cover. I don't know that New Orleans wins this game, but I'm leaning New Orleans to cover. And I know that inside of 3 points, that's really tough. You're basically picking them to win, because it's a very small window where they do cover but not win. I just I don't know that Tennessee's got enough. I've seen them the last few weeks. They've played really, really well coming in, but losing Julio and seeing New Orleans kind of figure it out in the fourth quarter with Simeon last week. Oh, the other thing, I think Taysom Hill plays a big part in this game. No Alvin Kamara, big deal for New Orleans. Obviously, I think they overcome that or mitigate that to an extent is probably the better way to say it. They mitigate that with Taysom Hill in the game. I think they generate some runs with Ingram, with Taysom Hill in the game. I think Sean Payton's going to come in with some packages that are going to be well prepared for Taysom Hill. Question is does Taysom Hill end up throwing some stupid throws like he normally does and end up turning the ball over? I think Taysom Hill ends up being the kind of guy. I think they do it much like they did with Jameis, where Simeon probably plays inside in between the 20s, and then once they get inside the 10, then it becomes the Taysom Hill show, because that becomes very, very hard to defend. It changes the numbers on defense and blocking and gap control on both offense and defense for those guys. And I don't know that Tennessee's a very disciplined team, but to have to defend the amount of things that New Orleans is going to make them defend today is going to be very tough for them. So I'm leaning New Orleans. I'm taking New Orleans +3, but fascinating game. Probably one of those games that at the end of it, I would love to go in and watch the all 22. I'm curious if this moves to 3.5. Now it's still at 3. I would love to see this move to 3.5. And if it's 3.5, I'd feel much better about it. But 3 is good enough because a field goal game gives you the push there. Really, really fun game in that one. Really, really fun and interesting matchup for me. All right. Let's see. Yes, Kamara is out, Ryan. So with Kamara being out, they're going to run Mark Ingram, and they're also going to bring Taysom Hill in more for some of their run packages. They're going to manufacture running yards out of this. Because I do think that they know that they're going to have to be able to run the ball, and they don't want to put any pressure on Trevor Siemian to have to throw the ball 40 or 50 times. So with Kamara out, that's why Taysom Hill being active I bet Taysom Hill. So Taysom Hill, I think, had 2 throws last week. 2 throws last week, 1 run. I think it's totally different this week. I think he has probably closer to 10 throws this week. And maybe 5 to 10 runs, or it could be vice versa. 10 runs and 5 to 10 throws. So yeah, I think it's going to be in that 5 to 10 range on each. That means he's playing a bunch of snaps, right? Like if he's getting the ball that much, he was in on a good amount of snaps last week, but he just wasn't a factor in the offense. But I think they make it more of a factor this week. I think it's something that Vrabel has to be prepared for. And he knows, and they probably had to spend a good amount of time on it, right? Rather than just playing the Trevor Siemian offense. So we'll see how it goes. But I think Kamara being out is mitigated by Taysom Hill's presence in that offense. But I do think it's a big deal that he's out. I don't want to act like, hey, like, oh, Kamara's out. It's no big deal. It's a huge deal that he's out. But I do think that they have ways of overcoming that. These are 2 of the guys that I would consider for coaches of the year so far. Like they would be in the conversation for sure. All right. I marked that down, right? Okay, yeah. Jacksonville, Indianapolis. Probably not going to spend a whole lot of time on this game. Jacksonville was able to get some good pressure. I'm interested to see if Josh Allen continues his progression. He looked really good last week. He's had a pretty good season so far this year. And he was a late bloomer at Kentucky, so it makes sense that he is a late bloomer in the NFL. He didn't really put up the numbers that everybody thought that he would last year, but now he's kind of coming into form, which makes sense. Fascinating to see if that continues. Indianapolis's offensive line is now healthy. That makes them one of the best offensive lines in the NFL now. Outside of them being able to run block for Jonathan Taylor or whoever is back there, which I think is a big deal. The biggest deal is that they're going to allow Carson Wentz not to do stupid Carson Wentz stuff, but allow him to be good Carson Wentz. Carson Wentz gets into trouble whenever he tries to do too much. There was a lot of that last week by quarterbacks, by the way. So many quarterbacks trying to do too much, and it ends up being a massive, massive problem for them. And Carson Wentz is victim number 1 of himself. So for me, I don't think this is a game where Jacksonville, like I'm not looking at Jacksonville as like, oh, they're good now. I do think that Jacksonville can be better than what most people believe that they are, because they do have the ability to run the ball. They do have, Trevor Lawrence can throw it whenever necessary, but for right now, you don't want to put him on the, um, he's not the type of guy that you want to put the entire game on him. I think they do a better, I think he's better whenever they limit him. Um, I think he's better whenever they limit the amount of throws that he has to make, especially downfield. I want to look up and see. I passed it. Where'd you go? Okay, I was trying to look to see if does anybody have any information on Robinson, because I know he was questionable, and I haven't seen any updates of whether he's going to play or not. Give me 1 second. See if there's any news on James Robinson, because I think that's a big deal. I think the Jacksonville offensive line isn't terrible at run blocking. I'm not clicking. Did not participate in positional drills during media portion. Oh, that was the other day. James Robinson trending down. He's a true game time decision, according to Rap this morning. Playing likely won't make it worse, but that doesn't necessarily mean he'll go. Robinson will work out pregame. And he is currently going through pregame warm-ups. Oh, he looks kind of labored. I'm not going to lie. And this little video that I'm looking at right here, he looks kind of labored. That makes me think he's not going to go. And even if he does go, he's not going to be as effective. All right. He's testing it out, but we'll see. So James Robinson not playing is going to be a big deal. Is it? It's not 12 yet. Oh no. My mouse might die during this, and that's going to be awful if that happens. So, James Robinson, definitely I might have to figure out how to do this. Sorry, if my mouse dies, I can't control stream. All right. Well, we'll just have to roll with it. See how it works. Good luck. Let's see what it's actually on. It's on 4%. It should make it through. We're rolling the dice here, guys. All right. So for this particular game, if Josh Allen can get pressure, they can easily cover this game. I just feel like Indy's offense is too good. That offensive line allows them to be much, much better. It allows Carson to not do stupid stuff. That's going to allow them to be pretty solid today. I don't know if taking 10 points with Carson Wentz is really hard. Although I would have done it on the Thursday night game a couple of weeks ago. So, All right. Yep. I'm going to take Indy. It's in Indy. I'm going to take Indy -10 in this one, simply because I just don't know that I don't know that James Robinson is going to go, and I think that's going to put Jacksonville in a weird spot. But Jacksonville is trending up. All right, Detroit Pitt. This is going to be a fun game. Let me check I want to check the weather on this one. I checked it before, and it looked like there was going to be a little bit of snow in the area, but I don't think it's going to be anything that's going to be bad. Sorry, I should have just done this. No better. Pittsburgh weather. Yeah, so overcast and clouds, a little bit of snow in the forecast for them, which is going to be interesting. So, no Big Ben today, which is obviously a big deal. Ben is now in COVID protocol. He had some symptoms, self-reported the symptoms, tested positive. He's out for today. If Ben hadn't self-tested or hadn't self-reported, he probably would have cleared today, because if he's vaccinated, they probably wouldn't have tested him, because they only have to test once a week, every 2 weeks, something like that. So it probably wouldn't have come up. He probably would have played. However, Ben did the right thing by telling and not putting teammates or other players on the field at risk, which is nice. I did make the joke, like, that's great and everything, but I still couldn't help myself and still wanted to make the joke that Ben, of course, Ben told, because there's never been an injury that he hasn't told somebody about. He likes everybody to know what he's playing through, and there's always something every week. So, of course, he told. But here's the thing with this particular game, and we're not going to spend a ton of time on this particular game, because it's not. While it's a big deal for Pittsburgh and the AFC North, which is very, very tight right now, it's still Detroit, right, who is a bottom dweller. The reason I wanted to talk specifically about this game for a little bit is because this was a game where Detroit's going to win at some point, right, throughout the year. There's some game that they're going to accidentally stumble upon and win. And I was already leaning toward it being this game. And the reason for that is because Pittsburgh kind of just claws out wins here and there, right? They don't beat anybody by any significant margin. They just kind of figure out a way to win, and they win ugly every week. Mostly because Ben isn't terrific at throwing downfield. He's more of a statue in the pocket than he's ever been. He can't rely on just his size and his mobility in the pocket to be able to get him free enough to make a big throw downfield, like he was used to. The weapons aren't particularly, stellar. I mean, love Deontay, love Claypool, who is out today. Love Najee Harris. Freiermuth has shown that he's a really good route runner and can be effective inside the red zone. But it's tough because it just does. There's nothing about this offense that feels smooth, right? Like, the offensive line has a big thing. It's big on that because they can be beat. It's not good. It's not a good offensive line, and Big Ben's having to, and the offense is schemed around it. Big Ben has to play around it. So this felt like a game that was already going to be close. I straight up, I'm taking Detroit I wanted to claim Detroit -8 or +8 the other day. Because I knew that this game was probably going to move towards Detroit. I just never felt like Pitt was going to be that much better than Detroit. Detroit's going to play this within a score, I believe. Now, can Detroit actually pull this game off? And I forget who it was. It wasn't Hodzi. Who was it from our Thursday night? Capacity Plays, welcome in. Thanks so much for the follow. Really appreciate it. Welcome in. For me, who was it on Thursday that was, I don't see the name. I'm trying to think of who was it on Thursday. Morning, Ryan. Welcome in. Happy Sunday. Happy NFL Sunday. That was a Pitt fan that they were like, please don't pick against Pitt. But the thing is I'm definitely picking against Pitt. And I think Detroit can manufacture enough offense and can pull off a couple of special teams plays today and get it done. This to me is the upset of the week waiting to happen. Capacity Plays, good morning. Let's go Cowboys. We had a good discussion about the Cowboys a little bit earlier. We'll recap it at the end of the show. Snow on the ground in Lambeau. It's officially football season. I love it. Love it. Love it when the snow comes in. I like when the snow comes in, but it's not a huge impact in the game. I can recap it for you in just a second after this Detroit one, Capacity. But we can recap it pretty quickly. Yeah, man, it's just everything about this game says I think that DeAndre Swift could have a big game, specifically passing, because I don't know that the linebackers are going to be fast enough to be able to catch DeAndre Swift out of the backfield. It could be a Jamal Williams game if they figure out how to get the run going inside. Is Jamal Williams, is he healthy? He was injured last week. He was out last week. Jamal Williams is out again. Never mind. So still, DeAndre Swift. The Lions' offensive line isn't terrible, right? So Penei Sewell was playing at left tackle. They've now moved him back to right tackle because the left tackle came back. And they have one of the better centers in the league. They're a little bit not as good at. Hang on, I'm looking for something here. They're not as good at guard, and that's where they're going to have to improve. But if they can get a solid guard in the draft and then find kind of a maybe a free agent replacement at the other guard spot, this is going to be a fun team to watch in terms of being able to running the ball because I love DeAndre Swift and also like Jamal Williams a good amount too. Look, the whole Goff situation is what it is. We all know that Goff ain't the guy, and they took those picks and that contract on just to have a mediocre quarterback to kind of get them through for a year or maybe two, and it was a pay for draft picks basically is what they did. They were trading away Stafford. They knew Stafford probably didn't want to stay there. They were going to be able to get full picks for Stafford, plus get a replacement level guy, and get paid to do it. So I understand why they did it. They don't have a wide receiver. That's the problem. If they had a wide receiver that was better than a number two, then I feel like I would feel much more comfortable with them. I do think Anthony Lynn's called a good game for them so far this year, and has been solid in the play calling. I just don't think Jared Goff has executed very well. I think this is the game where they could potentially do it. Pittsburgh's defense isn't bad. It's pretty good, especially up front. That front seven's really good. Um, they've had some solid safety play, and Joe Hayden's all right, still all right as a corner. I don't feel like those corners are anything special. I think those corners are plenty good enough. But Detroit's going to have to figure out how to get the running game going today. If they can figure out how to get the running game, and if DeAndre Swift has, 150 yards from scrimmage, they've got a shot. I feel like they've got a shot because I don't think that this offense is going to be anything that Detroit can't handle today, even though they probably have the worst defense in the NFL. Mason Rudolph has never been the guy for me. I think there's too much. I just feel like he's going to leave the ball up too much for them to be able to do it. I'm trying to talk myself into Pittsburgh, and I just can't do it. I just can't do it. I feel like this is the game that Detroit gets it done. All right, I'm making the call. I'm gonna call Detroit upset today. Not just a cover, but a Detroit upset. Yeah, that's the one thing that scares me. Capacity is Najee tends to be the motor of that offense because that's how they've had to play. Um, yeah, I think you know I don't think this defense is. I think there's enough offense that Detroit can get going, and they know that they're gonna have to. They know that they're gonna have to be able to stop those wide receivers. They're gonna let Najee have a day. I think. I think they're more interested in seeing if Mason Rudolph can give them a couple of turnovers, and they may say, "Hey, we may let Najee run for 80 to 100, but if we can get Rudolph to throw us um, a couple of easy balls and a couple of turnovers, we got a shot." I think Pitt is better with Rudolph. Big Ben is really bad, and they would have been winning. I think Big Ben does enough. I don't think there's a huge drop off between Big Ben and Rudolph, but Mason Rudolph is one of the worst backups in the NFL, if you ask me. I don't understand how he still has a job. Um, but we'll see today. I mean, if he comes in and doesn't play well today, when against the bad Lions defense, we'll see. We'll see. All right. Yeah, I gotta go Lions, man. I spent a little bit longer talking about that game than I would have liked to, but it's okay. It was worth it. It will be a fun game to watch. That one's gonna be an interesting one because I don't think Pittsburgh runs away with it at all. And if they do, maybe I'm wrong about Mason Rudolph. I don't think so. All right. On to what I think is one of the more fun matchups of the week. And I say this every week about both Cleveland and the Patriots. Every week. I love the Patriots because they're such a matchup oriented team. I love Cleveland because the way that they play is usually a different matchup than what most teams have to face every week. They play in a specific way where the offense runs through the offensive line and the running game that most teams aren't particularly well prepared for. That. It's kind of like Tennessee, right? Like think of it like that. That's how this offense runs. And if you can't stop the run, you will not beat the Cleveland Browns. So, how does Bill Belichick and this defense, how do they stop Cleveland today? And I think that's going to be an interesting thing. So, there's a couple ways that, and this is what I love about this. No Chubb, no Hunt. I don't think it's a problem. I mean, it hurts when Chubb's not there. I think it hurts less when Hunt's there. Chubb is more of the Chubb is the home run hitter from midfield, whereas Hunt is kind of like, I'm going to get you 10, 15-yard chunks at a time. And I'm also going to be a little bit tougher runner in the middle. And I think Dearness Johnson can get it done. He showed that he can do it on the Thursday night game, and he can do it against solid teams. So, again, I think it's this run game is mostly the offensive line. That's not saying Chubb and Hunt aren't good players. They absolutely are solid runners. Chubb is a really good runner. However, this offensive line is really what makes the run game go. You saw that with Dearness Johnson on the Thursday night game, and then all of a sudden, like Dearness Johnson goes out there and he played really well himself. I think he had like 50 yards over expected in terms of what was blocked for him, which was fascinating. So every week when we talk about the Patriots, it's how does Bill Belichick and this defense match up and play against whatever team? And we're pretty much spot on, right? Every week of we know, but Bill Belichick is easy to figure out because we know what like we can see what an offense, what their number one thing is that they do. What are they the best at? And that's the thing he's going to say, let's stop them from doing that. With the Bucks, it's the downfield passing. So hey, they're going to play too deep. They're going to play off coverage. They're not going to let Mike Evans and AB and those guys beat them deep. And they're going to invite you to run the ball. They're going to give you light boxes all day and they're going to allow you to run the ball. It's exactly what they did. Did the same thing against Cowboys, right? So for me, this particular game, the Patriots are going to have to load the box. They're not going to be able. Look, we've talked about Uche, we've talked about Udon. Somebody we haven't talked enough about is Christian Barmore, rookie defensive tackle out of Alabama, who's played really, really well. I think he's a big key to this front line for New England today, and he's played pretty well this season. This front line and linebackers, the front seven is what's going to be really interesting because they're going to have to play super well disciplined against this Cleveland run game. Again, it hurts that they don't have Chubb and Hunt, but it's not a fatal flaw. It's not hugely detrimental because the offense and the run game runs through the offensive line, not necessarily through whoever is actually toting the rock. So, are they going to load the box, or are they going to have to load the box, New England, to stop the run game? If they do, they're kind of okay with it. And the reason for that is they like to play a lot of single high, a lot of man coverage, and they're okay with the run game. Now, where this becomes a problem is Baker Mayfield isn't great. He's not one of the best quarterbacks in terms of throwing against man coverage. The key to that, however, is can his receivers get open against man coverage? And the second part of this is Baker's legs. And I think that's kind of an underrated quality for today. Baker should be able to run the ball himself a good amount whenever he's dropping back today. If the throw isn't there in man coverage, those cornerbacks in that secondary are going to have their back turned to the line of scrimmage, and Baker's going to be able to scramble. So look for a few first downs to be able to get there. And it's going to open up some options of what the Browns are going to want to do on third down. Whenever it's 3rd and 4, they don't necessarily have to run for it, because what they can do is they can drop back to pass, and Stefanski's really good at designing offenses around this, is they can drop back to pass and still allow Baker to be able to scramble for it. Now, the linebacker play is pretty good for the Patriots, so it's not like it's not like he's just going to have free roam all day long, but he will have his opportunities and will be able to selectively go for those. So, um that to me is going to be the key to the game, because I do think that I think the Patriots are going to be able to move the ball a little bit. So we've talked about it before. Myles Garrett can take over a game. I do think he has an opportunity to take over this one. Except New England is again going to force them to be able to try to get pressure from somebody else. Is Jadeveon Clowney playing today? That's one of the big things for me, is because Clowney being on the other side. One of the big parts for Cleveland is their secondary is healthy, and I think that's going to be a big piece for them. Clowney's not on the injury report, so that means Clowney's good to go. I think that's massive for them, because they need both Garrett and Clowney available to him. Books got him over 30 and a half passing attempts. Weird. Who, Baker? I mean, eh, 30 passing attempts means it's probably going to be a close game, because here's the thing. If they think about it, right? If they get into, if they're, if they've got the ball in the last 2 minutes of the second half, and the ball in the last 2 minutes of the game, trying to win it and needing to win it, Baker's going to get anywhere from 10 to 15 pass attempts just in those 2.5 minutes, right? It really comes down to the game flow. Shuttlesworth, welcome in. Thanks so much for the follow. Really appreciate it. Um, so yeah, that one's a little bit of a weird one, because I feel like the game flow is going to dictate that one. I and I do think that there's an element to that of, it's probably higher than what it should be, because Chubb and Hunt aren't in the game. So for me, I'm leaning towards Baker being over that, just because I do. The problem is even if he throws 30 to 35 times in this game, he could be over, or he could end up under that game. He could end up under that because maybe he drops back 35 times, but he's got 5 or 6 rushes in there too that drop him below that. That's a tough bet, man. It's a tough bet. Interesting fantasy question on this game when it makes sense in your breakdown. Start Bolden or AP. Um, I would say, I would expect. Here's the thing. It's really hard to know what New England wants to do on offense, right? So Ramondre Stevenson is out of the doghouse. However, Bolden's been running okay for New England. So I don't know who gets the rock, but it feels like if Ramondre is fully healthy and fully good to go, then Ramondre feels like the guy. Man, I just don't know that I could start AP against New Orleans. I would. I don't know, man. Ty Johnson, he might honestly be a better. He might honestly be a better than those two. That's tough. Here's the thing. I If Ramondre Stevenson is out there, I would consider it. Um, I just Shuttlesworth, maybe look at Foreman over AP. Was seeing that he might get more run than AP. The problem is um New Orleans is so good against the run that you're just probably not going to get a ton of running yards against them. There may be some passing yards. Um, I don't know. I don't know. Never. I don't know. That's a tough question. I think for me, when I'm looking at this matchup, it's really about I would love to give you a suggestion, never, but I feel like whatever I give you is probably going to be wrong. If you could grab Stevenson, Jonnu Smith is inactive. Oh, okay, that's going to be big. So for me, I here's the thing. I lean Cleveland to cover this. Is it still 2.5? Let me make sure. It's down to 2. I lean Cleveland to cover the 2.5. Would have liked it at 3, obviously. I think Cleveland wins this. So on defense, Cleveland loves to they'll get pressure, they'll bring a couple blitzes here and there. They play zone behind it for the most part. They are healthy in the secondary. There's nothing about this offense in terms of weapons that scares me against Cleveland's defense. They've showed that they can shut down better offenses. The thing that scares me is Mac Jones is going to dink and dunk all over the place. And Cleveland's going to let him do it. So that's going to negate some of the pressure that's going to happen. You guys know me. I'm not anybody that's been here before today knows that I'm just not that on in terms of believing that New England is a good team yet. I think they're an average team. I think they're well coached. I don't think the talent I think the talent on defense is solid. I think Bill Belichick is what's making them a good defense at this point. I still don't totally believe in this offense. Their offensive line has some question marks, some issues, and is going to give. Remember earlier in the year, whenever Mac was under pressure all day long, I think they've solved that with a little bit of quick game. I don't think hey, sexy, what's up, man? I don't think they've completely solved everything at offensive line, though that offensive line has gotten a little bit better. I think they're going to struggle to move the ball against Cleveland today. I think Cleveland's going to be okay in terms of being able to run the ball. And then Baker's going to have to be smart in the shots that he takes. It's going to be important for his guys to get open versus man coverage, specifically quickly off the line. I would expect Landry to have a good day today. I don't know that anybody on the Patriots are going to be able to manage Jarvis Landry today for the most part. And if Baker plays like he did last week and he's able to hit those big, and he's able to hit those big down the field throws like he did to Njoku and to Donovan Peoples-Jones last week, that is huge. Typically that's what New England likes to try to take away, is to take away those deep shots. I don't think they have the weapons on defense to be able to stop the run game and stop the deep pass. And that's why I love the way that Cleveland is built, is because they don't have to rely on Baker to be able to do that. Baker's good enough to do what they need him to do, to throw on time, hit guys whenever they're open, especially in zone, and then be able to take the shots up top whenever they expose themselves. So we'll see. I like Cleveland to cover the 2.5 for sure. And even at 2, I would still probably pick Cleveland to cover. I think this is going to be a very, very good game. Give me 1 second, sexy. Cleveland plus 2.5. All right. Last favorite game today having to do with scoring. Are you talking about in terms of like high scoring, or in terms of like against the odds, like versus the odds, or what do you mean? Okay, high scoring. Let's see. Atlanta, Dallas, probably. I like Atlanta, Dallas. Minnesota Chargers could be fun. The problem is Minnesota's going to run a ton because the Chargers can't stop it. Carolina, Arizona may not be. Dak seems hurt to me. Dak was under pressure last week and definitely was not on it. Second week around, let's see. Just because he was hurt last week, sexy, doesn't mean he's also hurt this week, but we'll see. Yeah, I like Atlanta, Dallas is probably my favorite. I don't think Carolina, Arizona is as offense heavy as a lot of people might think, because I do think Carolina's defense matches up pretty well. Seattle, Green Bay. That one, that one's always a weird one. Every time Seattle, Green Bay plays, it's weird. Oh, capacity. That's right. We said we were going to talk about Dallas. I'll recap Dallas real quick for you. KC, Las Vegas. Oh, KC, Vegas might be the big one. KC, Vegas. That's the one. Yep. KC, Vegas. That's the one. Highest scoring game of the week. All right. So, capacity. When we talked about, um, the Dallas Falcons game, I think the a couple things that we talked about last week, and I got to recap this quick so we keep going. A couple things we talked about last week. Dak was off. Left tackle Terrence Steele did not play well. I think Dak was off a little bit due to that, but Dak was off because Dak was off. He also tends to have 2 or 3 throws a game that kind of go sideways and are kind of WTF throws. Most of the time they land on the ground and it's not a big deal. But last week they ended up in the other team's hands. Denver got healthy at the cornerback position, which was big for them because they do have 3 solid cornerbacks in oh my god, in Fuller, Darby, and Surtain. And so I think that was big for them. And then Judy coming back is a big deal for Denver. So there was a lot of things good happening for Denver. I think they came in with a good game plan. I think that Dallas's defense is solid. I do not think it's one of the best um, defenses in the NFL. I think Atlanta could potentially move the ball on them. I don't. I think Dallas comes in and says, "Hey, I think we can put Trayvon Diggs on Kyle Pitts, and we're probably going to be fine." If they decide to do that, Pitts could have a big game. I do think Pitts can outplay Trayvon Diggs. Diggs can give up a good amount of yards and then still get a pick at the end of the game. But I think if it's one-on-one Pitts versus Diggs, Pitts is going to win that matchup. I mean, he had a 156.3 rating against him last week. Diggs did against Tim Patrick of all wide receivers. I think he's going to struggle with size and smart throws by a quarterback, and you're going to get that from Matt Ryan this week. The one place that Dallas can win is up front. I think they could get a ton of pressure on Matt Ryan. The issue is that Atlanta has kind of figured that out a little bit with the quick game, the use of Cordell Patterson, using some extra blockers here and there. So I think it's going to be a high scoring game, and I think Atlanta is going to be able to keep it up. If Dallas doesn't keep their foot on the gas the entire time and just put as much pressure on the Atlanta secondary as they can while staying away from AJ Terrell, I think they could win big. If they don't do that and they decide, hey, we want to run the ball a little bit, we're gonna take what Atlanta's given us here and there. Like I feel like they're not going to pull away from Atlanta like you would expect. It doesn't mean Dallas isn't a good team. I just think that Atlanta has a weird kind of unique matchup here where if they play smart, they could potentially play this close. Yeah, I think so. Sexy. I think Gallup does come in immediately as the wide receiver 3. I think Cedric Wilson has played really well there, but I think Gallup he adds a different dynamic to him. Wilson makes a really good 4 specifically too. So they have a really solid selection of wide receivers, and they could spread them out and do that. But I also feel like Dallas probably feels like they could win in the run game in this one and may potentially utilize that. Dallas probably has more of a balanced offense, or at least balanced play calling today. My question is does Dak change a lot of those at the line before they get into the run? And does Atlanta invite that a little bit? So I don't know. We'll see. Fun matchup though, but it's not an easy matchup for Dallas by any means. I don't think. You got to stop Patterson. Patterson's hard to stop. I mean, again, if you bring in a cornerback to guard him, they're going to put him in the backfield and they're going to run him. And then they've got numbers in the run game. If you bring in a linebacker, they're going to put him in the slot. Now you've got a linebacker covering Cordell Patterson, who's good enough to be a number 3 or even potentially a number 2 wide receiver. And you're going to have a linebacker guarding him. That's a mismatch too. So no matter what you do against Patterson, unless you have somebody specific to stop him that is a good fit, then it's going to be tough. Like there's not a whole lot of players. There's a Derwin James, maybe like the type of player that can stop a guy like Patterson if he's used correctly. And Arthur Smith does a good job. Matt Ryan does a good job of getting the ball out. And Matt Ryan's been playing pretty well too. So I wouldn't underestimate Atlanta's ability to hang in there with Dallas today. All right, Minnesota LAC. So this one's one of my favorite matchups of the week as well. These last few games are all pretty unique and games that I definitely want to talk about. Let me get this tweet sent out. All right, so man, this game is going to be entertaining, right? Like, there's no shot this is not a thriller for me. Minnesota plays every game close. And we talked about that a little bit last week, right? Unless they're able to run the ball extensively well, like exceptionally well, they can't pull away from teams because they play such situational football that as soon as they get up by 8-10 points, they're like, oh, we got to run the ball. We got to run the ball. And it allows the other team to come back. They've got to get out of that mindset, and they've got to put the pressure on other teams when they do get ahead, because they do want to try to run the ball as much as they possibly can. For this particular game, Minnesota should be able to run the ball. LAC is horrible against the run. I think they're the worst in terms of DVOA against the run on defense. And they also invite the run, right? So Brandon Staley, guy of analytics, knows what he's doing and says, hey, if they want to run the ball against us, fine. Teams generally have less EPA per play whenever they run the ball. So if you want to run the ball and you're getting 4 or 5 yards of carry, that's fine. We'll stop you once, somewhere in there. And if you're just barely getting first downs all the way down the field when you're running the ball against us, you're probably going to stall somewhere, right? There's going to be a 3rd and 1, 3rd and 2, 3rd and 3 that you run and you just don't get it. And if we can get you into those positions, we're going to win more often than not. And oh, by the way, nobody else is going to go for it on 4th down as much as I'm going to, be Brandon Staley. And I'm going to get an advantage in that number game too. So he is using analytics to be able to determine how he wants to guard offenses as well as the space that he's putting in between, which is fascinating, by the way, fascinating. So for me, that's a really interesting aspect to this game, because if Minnesota can come in and run the daylights out of the football and get 7-8 yards carry, which is very possible, it's going to change how the Chargers like to play. The Chargers are going to play, some mixed up rotational coverages behind it. They're going to play a good amount of zone. They'll play some man in there. Derwin James is going to be able to come in, and I think they're going to use Derwin more as a cornerback in this game than they do anything else, because I don't think they have enough corners at this point. Chris Harris Jr. has not played well, nearly as well as I thought he would on this Chargers team. And Derwin James is going to have to play cornerback. And the thing is he's good enough as a safety to play corner. Like, he can be a lockdown corner. So they've got to take away Jefferson. They've got to take away Thielen. That leaves KJ Osborne. And maybe they put Derwin on Osborne, or I'm interested to see how they work that particular matchup. But I do think that the Chargers have some decisions to make on defense as to how they want to play this game, because I don't think they're going to be able to. I don't think they want to load the box. I think they're going to continue to play the way that they typically play, which is allowed to run. But they even whenever they've tried to stop the run, they can't. So here's the way I see, if the Chargers want to win the game, here's the way that I see that they're going to have to win the game. And this is where the matchups get fun. The Chargers need to get out to a large lead early and force the Vikings to get scared of being able to run the ball and get them out of running the ball. That's going to put Kirk Cousins in having to push the ball down the field a little bit, taking a little bit more chances, and that's going to give them their opportunities. Now, the problem with that is that Minnesota is pretty damn good against the pass. I think they're 4th overall in DVOA against the pass. They are a good pass defense team. So how do the Chargers do that? Do they try to run the ball a little bit here and there with Eckler? Do they be smart about it? Do they take shots? Again, I think Breeland has played very well this season, but Breeland's the type of guy that I feel like he plays very aggressive, and you can get him with a double move. Keenan Allen and Big Mike Williams are perfect at that. So if they target him, and I've been waiting for it for a week or two, and nobody's really tried it that well against Breland. If the Chargers, who are very smart in the way they scheme things up, if they can pull one or two of those off, they get up by a couple touchdowns, and I think it becomes an onslaught from there, because I think they then get the game and the game script and the game flow into the type of game that they want to play. And Kirk Cousins, while he can make some big throws at times, I don't think he can consistently do it. He's shown that whenever it comes down to, he'll make big throws in the middle of a game, but outside of the one KJ Osborne wide open touchdown throw in overtime that he threw, outside of that one, it's not really what you want to have to rely on. He's kind of like Baker Mayfield in that aspect. So fascinating game in terms of matchups. Fascinating game in terms of how this one actually ends up playing out, because this is going to be a wild one. I mean, there's no shot that this is not a crazy game, because both teams love to play crazy games for whatever reason. I don't think the Chargers, after all, are all that great in terms of an overall team and roster. I think they are very well coached, and that has led them to and they use the analytics, and I think that that's given them an advantage over their opponents. Minnesota's kind of quite the opposite. They go against the trends. And I think that's what separates them in this game, in my mind, is that I think the Chargers are going to make smarter decisions throughout the rest of the game. Sexy Mike Williams or Keenan Allen? I think this is a Mike game too. I do. I think every game it's they have the choice of who do they really feel like is going to be able to just torch the other team. And whenever it's teams that like to play man coverage and think that they can manage them, then it ends up being a Keenan Allen game, because he's able to get open. Todd's welcome in. Because he's able to get open against man coverage and play those little bit of underneaths when teams like to be aggressive. That's whenever I look at Mike Williams having a potentially big game. I think this is a Mike Williams game. I think Shuttlesworth, appreciate it. Have fun, man. Enjoy your Sunday. Good luck to your team this week. So for me, I think that the Vikings will want to play this a little bit more aggressively, and it's going to be more of a Mike game. I could totally see them putting Bashaud Breeland on Keenan Allen and then rotating coverage over to Mike. And then that's going to be an interesting matchup as to how they end up wanting to play this game. So super fascinating. Super, super fascinating. At 3.5, I think LAC, I think the Chargers are probably the better team, and deserve to win, but I just can't pick a team more than 3 points against the Chargers or against the Vikings. The Vikings continue to play close games. I don't think they're a bad football team. I just think that this is who they are. I'm going to go Minnesota +3. Again, I hate doing that, right? Because I hate picking the small window of a bet, of thinking, hey, I think the Chargers win, but I don't think the Chargers win by more than 3. That's a very small window to pick an NFL game, right? You have to be fairly lucky in being able to pick it, and I think you have to be pretty smart. You're either really smart or really lucky, or a little bit of both. Yeah, so I'm gonna go Minnesota +3. All right, Carolina, Arizona. This one. All right, my boy Gabe is not here. Gabe actually DM'd me on Twitter this morning and said, Kyler might be out. Remember rule number 2, right? Rule number 1, don't bet on Davis Mills. He's going to let you down every time. They play to the level of their competition, Tods. You are exactly right. And they're going to continue to play this week. I think they have a huge advantage in their ability to run the ball this week against the Chargers, because the Chargers are not good at stopping the run. So I think that's going to be a fascinating game. to watch play out. My only concern is if the Chargers can get a couple of big plays and get up by 10 or 14 against the Vikings, it's going to force the Vikings into a game that they don't want to play. Or can the Vikings remain patient enough with the run in the hopes that everything works out? So, do I want to turn the F1 game or F1 race on? No, because I don't want to be distracted. I'll watch it later. It's lights out. It's about to be lights out at the F1 race. So, yeah, the Minnesota Chargers game is going to be insane. Carolina, Arizona. So Gabe DM'd me on Twitter this morning and said, remember rule number 2. So rule number 1 is never bet on Davis Mills. He's always going to let you down. Rule number 2, never bet against the Cardinals, because I've bet against them every game this year except for I've bet against them every game this year. The only game that I've won on them is against the Packers. And even then, had AJ Green been paying attention and heard the call at the line of scrimmage on the last play, that's probably a touchdown, and I still probably lose that game. Actually, I think the Cardinals were 7.5, so I still would have won that, even if he catches that, if I remember correctly. But here I am in another week, and I'm going, I really kind of like the Carolina matchup in this game. Like and it looks like Kyler's not going to go today. Inactives aren't officially out, but it's looking pretty pessimistic about Kyler being able to go. So, we'll see. Here's the thing. Here's what I like about Carolina against Arizona. That secondary is really good. Dante Jackson, Stephon Gilmore has been everything that they've wanted, right? Like those two by themselves have been really, really good. They get pressure up front. Brian Burns, Hassan Reddick, like all the way across the front line, they play really, really strong in terms of rushing the passer. I don't think Arizona's offensive line is good enough to keep this defensive line at bay. So whether it's Kyler, whether it's Colt, they're going to be, and by the way, the Arizona changed their offense a decent amount last week. They went to a little bit more quick game, faster throws, get it out on time, rather than what they would typically call whenever Kyler's in the game. So they did change it. James Robinson is active. Ramondre Stevenson's active. Zach Moss is active. Chris Godwin's active. Zach Wilson is out. Jonnu Smith is out. I still don't think, based on what I saw, I'm not fully on board with James Robinson today. He looked a little bit labored, and maybe it was just warm-ups and then they give him a shot or whatever, and then he's good. Rondell Moore will play today. Cardinals will test Kyler Murray and DeAndre Hopkins pregame. Don't sound optimistic on either per sources. Cardinals taking big picture view and play division rival Seattle next Sunday. Sexy. I'll tell you thoughts on the Bucks after Carolina, Arizona. Remind me before I get into the next one, because Philly Denver is kind of fun too. So, I love the secondary matchup, especially if DeAndre Hopkins isn't playing, Kyler's not playing. That's a big deal. I like their ability to be able to get pressure. You can get Carolina right now at plus 8.5, which I would still probably do. The question I have, this is a very good Arizona defense. I love Vance Joseph. PJ Walker gives me no confidence whatsoever in anything that I've seen him do in his mop-up time and time in relief this season. He's given me no indication that he can be a good quarterback and competent enough to get this done. Now, he's got a full week. They knew Sam Darnold was going to be out. He's been the guy taking reps with the ones. He adds a different element to the run game, but it's now a piece of the game that other teams have to respect. I think the Cardinals have enough speed on defense, play enough zone that they can potentially take away PJ Walker's legs. They're still going to be able to get pressure on him because that offensive line for Carolina is bad. The mistake that I made last week was that I thought Carolina would do a good job of managing the game on defense against the Patriots in that offense, and they did exactly what I thought they would do. What I underestimated was how bad the offense was going to be against the New England defense with Sam Darnold, right? Like Carolina just with Sam Darnold in there, man, it's just not an offense. It's not an offense. So does PJ Walker? PJ Walker has to be better than Sam Darnold, in my opinion. It's hard to be worse than what I watched last week. When you're just tossing balls up to the defense, I mean, that's not an offense. So I am very curious as to how this offense, and that's what's going to dictate the game, because I don't think Arizona goes down and scores 40 points. I don't think they score 30. I think Carolina, now that they have CMC back, they've got PJ Walker in. I think he's going to rely more heavily on a guy like DJ Moore who can get open against man coverage or get open underneath against zone. And they're going to want to get the ball in his hands. This could be a big CMC game. Like CMC could have 30 to 40 touches in this game. Oh man. All right, I'm on the fence, so I'm going to go Arizona at -8.5 because I don't want to go against my rule. But this is going against my instincts, by the way. My instincts are telling me that Carolina covers this. God, I can't. -8.5. Arizona -8.5. And I don't feel good about it. My instincts are telling me Carolina plays this well. But my instincts tell me that Arizona can't cover every week. So this is why I make rules for myself. Yeah, I just don't know if Carolina can generate enough offense. That's the problem. With CMC back, maybe get him folded back into the offense, but it is PJ Walker's first real game. Yeah. All right. Carolina -8.5 is what it's at right now. So that's what I'm taking. Damn it, man. I'm fighting myself here. All right. Sexy, you wanted thoughts on Bucks. It's probably closer than 9.5. I think Washington is a weird kind of good matchup, and I think you saw that last year in the playoffs. You think Carolina covers as well, Tots? I do too. I just can't pick them. I just can't pick them because I'm like 50-50 on it because of their offense, and Arizona is a good football team, but are they 9-1 type of good? I don't know that they're that good. But we'll see. All right. Tampa Bay, Washington. Washington is just kind of a weird matchup. They're good on both lines, right? So Jonathan Allen could potentially create some issues for the Bucks on being able to pass rush up the middle. I think they could very well invite the run game. I think they know that they could get torched in the secondary even without AB, even without Gronk. Godwin is apparently a little banged up, but good to go today. So for me, that's going to be an interesting thing where they're going to have to figure out how does Washington really want to manage this. I think Washington could run if they get the ball to the edges. If it's not Gibson, then I think McKissick could have a potentially big game, because if you want to throw, the Bucks are pretty good against screens. That's the problem. It's not like you could just throw some swings and screens and feel like, oh, you're going to get the ball to the edge. It's not really the way that it works with the Bucks. But if you can run to the edge, which is basically pulling those linebackers up into the line of scrimmage and then getting outside, I think you're better off. And I think you can run the ball against the Bucks. If I think Washington is basically going to play a very soft defense and be able to back off and make sure that the big plays don't happen. And if that happens, then Washington's got a shot. Because Washington has a good enough offensive line to block it up front and be able to attack the secondary, which is the weak spot in the Bucks. And I think the Bucks are going to try to get after him. The only thing is Heineke's the wild card. He doesn't have a cannon for an arm. He's not going to be able to shove the ball downfield a ton and not put it in harm's way. If Heineke can hit those intermediate throws and give his guys some space, Heineke doesn't like to throw to open receivers. Heineke likes to throw to guys that are well covered that he could throw a jump ball to for whatever reason. Like there are guys that might run wide open, and he's like, "Nah, I'm going to throw it to McLaurin, who's one on one downfield." Like his decision making process is not there. It's not going to be like a Justin Fields type of game where the Bucks can get a shit ton of pressure and put Heineke in a bind. I think they're going to be Washington's offensive line is much better and it's going to be able to block them up a good amount. And Washington's going to leave extra guys in to block if they feel like they want to go downfield. Like they're not stupid in terms of how they run their offense. It's just the offensive players are not very effective outside of an Antonio Gibson and a Terry McLaurin at this point. So I think it's a weird game. I picked Washington to cover the 9.5. I feel like that's a little bit much for a Bucks offense that's kind of banged up. I don't think they're going to be as effective as they are. Again, if this is a game where the Bucks win by 20, I've got to reassess where I think I am on the Bucks right now, cuz I'm just not. I still don't feel like they're just so much better than everybody else, and I think their play calling leaves a lot to be desired in terms of just putting teams away. So that's that one. All right, Philly, Denver. Let's see here. Sorry, I want to make sure that I get these things out there so that people can come in and actually listen about their teams. Sexy. T.Y. Hilton back. I can see JT and Hilton having a great game. Yeah, so for me, for Indy, I think Indy's got a really good offensive line, especially now that they're all healthy. I think that can be huge. We'll see. I don't know if there's a particular target that I like better than another in Indy in terms of wide receivers, because I mean, Jacksonville, if Josh Allen on Jacksonville can get some pressure, I think they could potentially keep this close if they can get some stupid plays out of Wentz. But I think with that offensive line, Jacksonville's probably not going to be able to get a ton of pressure. I don't think Jacksonville's going to be as effective in running the ball because Robinson's hurt. I think a lot of that running game is Robinson, not necessarily the offensive line. And they don't run. I think the speed of Indy could help them in the run game today because there's not a whole lot of them just getting run over, I don't think. But we'll see. We'll see. I like JT. I always like JT. I don't know. TY? Sure. Why not? Sure, why not with TY? All right. Philly, Denver. So Denver comes in. Actually, we talked about Denver a little bit. So Philly comes in and Philly figures out, hey, we can run the ball, right? Like, where did this come from? And that was my question last week, is how committed are the Eagles to being able to run the ball? And last week they showed they are willing to run the ball whenever it makes sense. And I think that's a huge development. Now, their defense is historically bad. They have allowed 5 games of 80+% passing against them now, which is tied for the most in a season, and we're only halfway through the season. They didn't get a pass defense last week on 38 attempts, I believe. So this secondary is historically bad. They don't have the pass rush that they intended to have, so it's not causing as much pressure. They play as vanilla of a defense as you can get. What you see pre-snap is what you get post-snap. And I compared it this way. You know how in Madden, whenever you can hit R2 or R trigger and it shows you what the defense is running? Every offense has that ability against Philly right now because they can look and see what they're doing and go, yep, they're running cover 2. Yep, they're running 2-man. Yep, they're running cover 3. Yep, they're running cover 1-man. Yep, they're running lurk. Yep, they're running, they're blitzing. Whatever it may be. They know what they're getting pre-snap, and they don't rotate any of that post-snap. So, for me, this is a game where Denver is going to know exactly what they're getting. And when Teddy gets what he sees, he's going to be fine. And these receivers are good enough to get open against man coverage. Denver is healthy in the secondary, so you've got Darby, Surtain, and Fuller, who are now all healthy and are going to be able to guard Devontae Smith, Jalen Rager, whoever else the Eagles want to run out there, right? Um, I think Denver should be able to block them up front. Shouldn't have any issues there. We'll probably be able to run the ball a little bit. Denver's fairly good against the run, and I don't think they're going to worry about Jalen Hurts passing all over them. I think they're going to invite that a little bit. I think they're going to be more concerned about Jalen Hurts running and this running game. And if they can stop that, I think Denver is way out there in terms of being able to do it. I don't know if Mac and Cheese Jones still too legit to quit. New England's going to be an interesting game today. Chad, welcome in, by the way. Thank you very much. New England, I can't roll with New England. Not against. I still think Cleveland's one of the better teams in the AFC. Not that we know of any good teams in the AFC right now. For me, Philly is going to have to run the ball and be effective in it. I'm not sure they're as effective this week as they have been in last week's. I do think Denver is going to be able to play fairly well. I think they're going to be able to load the box and not have to worry about it. Philly does have that speed on the edge, which could be interesting, but I think Fangio is going to be well prepared for it. Here's the thing. We looked at the Chargers Eagles game last week, and I said Chargers -2 feels like a gimme. And I was really surprised that the line wasn't more. And then it moved to a pick'em game, which I thought was even more of a gimme. And it turned out to be a pretty competitive game, and the Eagles hung in there because the Eagles did say, hey, we can run the ball. We're going to run the ball. This week, I think it's a much tougher matchup against Denver because Denver can stop the run, and that's where Philly's been successful in the recent weeks of keeping games close. I have no idea why this line is only 1.5. And I feel like it should be closer to 3 or 4. And it's already moved to 1. People continue to bet on the Eagles, and I don't get it. I don't understand people. I don't understand. So Eagles going to fly right past the Pats to win? Huh? Eagles play Denver this week. Eagles play the Broncos, Chad. So for me, there's no reason for me to pick Philly in this game. Everything in this game ends up looking like Denver is going to win this game. Look, Denver, they were good in their first 3 weeks when they played bad teams. They were bad in the next few weeks whenever they played good teams. Now they're healthy, and all of a sudden they show up against the Cowboys team. Now, Cowboys helped them out a little bit last week, weren't really precise. But for me, nothing about this game says Philly to me. I think this is a better matchup for the opposing team against Philly this week than what the Chargers had last week. I think Philly actually had a good shot against a solid team in the Chargers last week. I don't necessarily think I don't think they're a really good matchup against Denver this week. So I'm leaning Denver pretty heavily in this game. I feel like this is, and every time I say this, I feel like it always comes back to bite me. But I feel like Denver by a touchdown or more in this game. I feel like this is one of the bigger locks of the week. So let's see, Denver, where we go? It's -1. Denver -1 in Denver. I don't get this, man. And it's always these lines like this that kind of throw me because whenever the line is so far off from what I think it should be, whenever it's more than a field goal off, and I'm going, wait, this makes no sense. There's always, does Vegas know more than I do? Because Vegas might know more than I do. Vegas definitely knows more than I do overall, but about this particular game, it makes me question what I know. And I think for this particular one, I think I'm pretty comfortable taking Denver. I don't think I don't think last week's good game against Dallas was an aberration for Denver. I think them getting healthy played a big piece of it. And I still think Fangio is one of the better defensive coordinators in the league, even if he's not one of the best best head coaches in the league at this point. So let's see. And this is a good matchup for Teddy too. I think Teddy's going to be able to find open receivers everywhere, and when receivers can get open, Teddy can hit them. So yeah, Denver. This feels like a pretty easy Denver cover to me. Actually, as a matter of fact, this might be one of the few games that I actually go in and put money on this week. I'm not a big bettor, but this particular game feels like a good one to do it. All right, let's keep it moving. Am I wrong? Like, chat, tell me if I'm wrong on this, but that I don't know. I just don't understand why people continue to bet. Because the thing is Denver's was favored by 1.5, and it's moved to 1. Hey, crossover, welcome in, brother. Denver at home too. That's a gimme, right? Like, I mean, we talked about it. Like, home field advantage is a little less recently. Like, the record and everything shows it. I just don't. I don't know, man. I don't know. All right, let's keep it moving. Seattle, Green Bay. Seattle. So Green Bay at home -3. Aaron Rodgers comes back, which is great for them. Nerdy Wolverine, aka Russell Wilson, comes back. Mr. Healing Power himself comes back, and him and his Healing Power hype video. I should be more interested in this game. It just does not feel. Ryan, pretty sure it was 2.5. Did it really? I'm fascinated to see now. Unless Philly can get home on Teddy though. I mean, the defensive line has been good enough, and Teddy's good enough in the pocket to be able to manage it. I just Philly's pressure hasn't been good, and they're not a heavy blitz team. I just don't, unless Philly changes something randomly today, unless they finally heard Shadow, unless they finally heard all the calls from the outside about how bad and how vanilla that defense is. Like, they probably won't change anything. Gannon is probably the worst defensive coordinator in the NFL right now, in my opinion. He actually has a little bit to work with, and just continues to say, hey, we're running 2-man. Go beat it. And people are like, hey, watch this. We beat it. He's like, okay, we're going to run cover 2 zone this time. Go beat it. And they're like, okay, here's our cover 2 beater. Beat it. Like, I don't know, man. Oh, sexy. Are you crazy to play Heineke on fantasy? I'll let crossover answer that one for you. Let's see. What was it? Eagles. I want to check this Eagles Broncos line history. I don't even know. Let's see. Line open. Let's do that. Let's see. Hope you're right. I'm a Dallas fan. So any Philly loss is good. Also Denver D in fantasy. So I think Denver's D is going to have a pretty solid game today. I still don't think that Jalen Hurts. Denver opened up as a 3-point favorite. Apparently, Ryan. Interesting. I don't get it. I don't get it. Herbert Brady, of course. Let me see. I want to see this actually. So it's -1 and it's -10 on each one. -110 on each one. So it's not like they've got a heavy juice on either side. I don't know. Okay. Seattle Green Bay. I'm just not that excited about this game. This feels like a Green Bay win. Wilson coming back doesn't make it particularly interesting. The Green Bay defense has been playing better. The reason this game doesn't interest me is I just don't feel like Seattle is a very good team. That defense is bad. I think they can run the ball a little bit. The offensive line has proven they're not terrific. They've got some decent weapons at wide receiver. Outside of that, like, Wilson carries this team, and I feel like they're so far behind at this point at 3-5. Can they actually get there? Right? Can they turn it around? Sharps flock to the Eagles every week. I don't know why. Yeah, I don't get it, Sam. Welcome in, by the way. I don't get it, Sam. They did it last week too. And I'm going, why? The Eagles aren't very good. Look, the Eagles are the Eagles want to play analytical football, right? Like they're like, hey, by the analytics say we need to pass more than we need to run. But then you go back to a guy like Brandon Staley, and Brandon Staley's like, look, here's the thing. Yes, there's more EPA per play if you're passing. The problem is you lose a physical element to the game if you're not running the ball. Running the ball does impose a physical element on the other team. And it's something that you're going to have to rely on, especially late in the season when teams are banged up and it's cold. And being able to utilize that is still a weapon. And just because the EPA per play is higher on passing doesn't mean there isn't a value in running the ball. And the Eagles, up until the last couple of weeks, have basically said, hey, we want to pass as much as we possibly can. And I think Sharps love the idea of that. And then all of a sudden the Eagles started running the ball, and they're now playing much better on offense, but they can't stop anybody on defense. So I don't get it with the Eagles. I'm curious. I haven't even paid attention to what the Eagles. Is this defense? Yeah, this is defense. All right, Eagles. Philly is 24th in DVOA on defense, 21st in the pass, 20th in the run. So they can't stop anything, basically, is what that tells me. And then overall, I would actually expect their DVOA on Philly's DVOA on offense to be better. Yeah, 13th on offense, 18th overall, 13th on offense. This has Denver as 2 spots below them. But whenever you factor in Dave, they're 1 spot ahead. So DVOA says this is a close game. The matchups and here, this is where the context, factoring in context, matters. Philly isn't getting any healthier at any given position, but Denver absolutely has. They've gotten healthy at wide receiver and at cornerback, and that's huge. So we'll see. I want to see this on offense now. I want to see how they break down in terms of, because I'm going to guess that on offense, Philly's DVOA is way higher running the ball than it is. Oh yeah, 4th in rush DVOA, 17th in pass DVOA. Sounds about right. Yep. Okay. That makes sense. Sorry, I can't get hyped up for the Seattle Green Bay game. I don't think it has big implications for Seattle. Like Seattle's not going to get Russ. I don't think Seattle's going to get Russ back and then all of a sudden make a run. And neither one of these teams are very exciting to me. I think Green Bay is a solid football team, but they don't, outside of Rodgers and Adams, there's nothing really like all that exciting about what they do. And they do a good amount of ball control offense, play it a little bit slow. I like Green Bay by 3, even with Russ. This feels like a field goal game. I would feel better if it was 2.5, but as long as it's 3 and not 3.5, like I can take Green Bay here. Yeah, the line's already moved to 3.5. At 3.5, I would probably take Seattle because Seattle can actually play keep up with them. Ryan, the 49er effect. Yeah, it is what it is, man. Let's see. Crossover. I get that Washington should pass a lot. Behind Heineke can very easily fall apart. Yeah, that's the thing, is they're going to have to pass. They're just going to have to be smart about how they do it. You can throw on this secondary of the Bucks, but you got to be smart about how you block him up front, basically. If you can block him up front, he's going to have time. Pittman or Hilton? Yeah, I would go sexy. I would go Pittman too. We get Lenny screens today with Godwin banged up, or Bucks run tight end today more with AB out. I could totally see them running more 2 tight end sets, especially because Washington isn't very good at linebacker. They'll play Landon Collins at linebacker, but Jamin Davis can be taken advantage of. Bostic can be taken advantage of. It's I don't think the Bucks have a very aggressive offense today. I do think that they could attack this secondary. I don't think that that's what they eventually try to do. Um, this feels like a weird matchup to me, man. Like looking through this, it just feels like the Bucks are going to come in and I said this about the Chicago game too, so I could be very, very wrong about this. But it feels like a matchup where they could come in and underestimate what the defense can do. The defense is going to invite the run. The difference in that game, however, was that Chicago's offense just fell apart. And if that happens, that could potentially happen with Washington, though I think there's very much a less of an opportunity of that happen, less likelihood that that happens in this game, simply because I just don't. I think the offensive line is a when playing the Bucks, your offensive line is probably the most important part of your offense because if you can block the Bucks up front, you're gonna be okay. If you can't block them, you're gonna have a long day. And the offense for the Bucks is gonna do what it does. The best thing you can do is just play too high and invite the run and see if they stay patient with that. Like I said, playing three down linemen isn't. I wouldn't consider that out of the question. Give me three down linemen, give me three linebackers, and get some speed on the field. Play some zone. It's that to me is kind of how I would figure it out against the Bucks. All right. Yeah, sorry. I don't really have a ton against Seattle Green Bay. I don't find any of the matchups interesting in this particular game. There's just not, everything leans Green Bay outside of Russell Wilson being there. So I'm taking Green Bay -3. Where my notes go? Sorry. Notes. Green Bay -3. All right. KC Vegas. So we go from a game that to me I have no interest in because the matchups just aren't that interesting to me. Sorry, I'm doing some stuff here. We got 2 games left, right? So we got 2 games left, 30 minutes, be perfect. We'll do a quick rundown of all the games in 10 minutes at the top of the hour so everybody can get off to kick off. So this to me is one of the we'll probably spend more time on this game than we will on Rams 49ers and I'll tell you why. KC looked like shit against the Packers. KC has looked bad against a lot of people, Sam. So all right, here's the thing, and we talked about this on Thursday. So if you were here on Thursday, there's not going to be much new other than I think I have a better idea of what the Raiders are going to do. So the blueprint has been laid against Kansas City. Like everybody knows how to guard Patrick Mahomes at this point. What kind of defense you run. You can't blitz him and you run too high and you force him to be patient. And if you do that, he's going to get frustrated and he's going to make mistakes. His accuracy hasn't been good enough to matter, or good enough to do anything in particular and be successful. And it's his ball placement has been bad enough that it's cost some tip balls, some throws to go off the hands of people, and it's been an issue, right? So everybody has played that against them, and it's been fairly successful. The offense has still continued to struggle. KC just cannot commit to running the football. And I don't think that they're particularly going to be able to just all of a sudden decide today, hey, we're going to run the football and we're going to be successful at it. Now, I will say their offensive line has done a good job. KC's offensive line has done a good job of run blocking. I think they're better at run blocking than they are at pass blocking. KC's offensive line. So I do think that they can run the ball, but for me, I think Vegas is probably a better football team than most people would believe, because I think Vegas plays a complementary style. I think they have some big time playmakers. I still like Bisaccia. The problem is that Everybody knows you play too high against KC. The problem for Vegas is their standard defense is the Gus Bradley Legion of Boom cover 3. And they run more cover 3 than any NFL team in the league. So do they continue to run what they're good at and what they know, or do they rotate and go into cover 2? Now, Gus Bradley rarely plays cover 2. Problem is I think he knows he has to play cover 2 today. I don't think Gus Bradley comes into this game and says, you know what, I'm going to run cover 3. I think there's no shot that he came in and said that he comes into this game and says, you know what, I need to run cover 3 and I need to run a single high safety. If he does that, he's going to lock old time Patrick Mahomes and Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce, and they're going to look like the old offense again. And if he does that, like, the rest of the NFL is going to be pissed because they're going to be like, wow, dude, like, you had the blueprint and we would love to keep them out of the playoffs. Because here's the thing. I think teams are still scared of KC. Look, Patrick Mahomes hasn't been playing his best, but if they figure it out in the second half of the season, they're still a dangerous team and not a team that a lot of teams want to play or would want to face in the playoffs, because they can still beat any team in the NFL by a good margin if they have the right game plan and if Patrick Mahomes is on it. So Mahomes not playing as well. Keep that cover 2. Bradley has to go to the cover 2. And I think he showed that in the past he will do it here and there. My question is how much of the cover 2 does he run? Or of the 2 high safeties, right? So it's what you have to do. Everybody else has done it. Gus Bradley just cannot decide not to do it today. And I think the Raiders are able to do that. I think the Raiders have enough weapons on offense, good enough on the offensive line that Derek Carr is going to be able to throw the ball all over the yard again today. I think they can run the football a good amount against KC, who hasn't been very good up the middle, although moving Chris Jones inside will help them a little bit there. It's going to be very interesting, this particular game. I've heard a lot of people talking about Vegas has played KC pretty well in the past, and like, look, 40-30 isn't necessarily playing them very well. I think the score is a bit misleading in the games last year, but we're in a different year, man. It is a different year, different players, different head coach at this point, new offensive play caller. A little bit curious as to if the sheen is coming off of Greg Olsen as an offensive coordinator. I saw a couple things last week where I criticized Derek Carr for not being as confident in his throws, and I think a lot of that came in with some distractions from the things that had happened the previous week. Stu, welcome in. Thanks so much, man. Thanks so much for the follow. Really appreciate it. Glad you're here. I think I saw some lack of confidence in throws from Derek Carr. I thought that a lot of that was I wanted to chalk it up to him being distracted from all the things that had gone on around the Raiders organization. But I also saw a couple of things last week that I just wasn't great. It wasn't as good in terms of play calling as the Raiders had been on offense in a while. And I don't know if that's because of distractions, and Olsen wasn't completely plugged in, or if that was something where it was just, Olsen, and the longer that he's separated away from John Gruden, if that offense is going to kind of go back to what he likes to do versus what Gruden was doing and what Carr was doing with Gruden. So we'll see. That's interesting. Rye, thanks so much for the follow. Welcome in. Appreciate it. Glad you're here. Stu, Raiders fan here. Wish I'd stumbled across your Twitch earlier. Followed you on Twitter for a long time. Glad you're here, man. Just glad you're here. Better late than never, man. Wait, this isn't, we've been here, what, 10 weeks now? So not that long. Not that long. I can't believe we've been doing this 10 weeks already, actually. Near, welcome in. Thanks for the follow. Appreciate it. Near 1903. Welcome in. Yes, I can't believe we've been doing this for 10 weeks now. Now that we've been doing it 3 times a week, 10 weeks. Actually, like the week before the NFL, so really probably 11, going on 12. Anyways, so this is a unique matchup. I'm surprised that Vegas is +3 here. It's moved to +2.5 as of right now. I'm looking at DraftKings odds. So at 3, I would be much more comfortable. I think Vegas wins this game. I think Vegas wins this game. I think this is a huge game for KC and for Vegas. And this is going to be an all-out brawl to the finish. And unless Vegas, I don't there's three ways that I see this kind of playing out, right? One is Vegas comes out and says we're going to play cover 2 and we're going to be as aggressive as we can possibly be and we're just absolutely going to torch you. Or KC comes out and Vegas starts playing cover 3 against them and KC just absolutely obliterates them and turns back into the team that can score 40 or 45. And then Steven, welcome in. Thanks so much for the follow. Really appreciate it. Glad you guys are here. Apparently we need to talk about KC and Vegas more often. Yeah, so the other thing is if I could see Vegas coming out playing cover 3, KC torching them, unlocking old Mahomes again. 99 Madden Mahomes rather than 75 Madden Mahomes, and them being able to throw up some points in a hurry, and then Vegas just never can kind of claw back. Or if it's a close game, I think Vegas gets them. If it's a closer game, I think that's it for me. Because I think Vegas is going to be able to run the ball a good amount. I think they're going to be able to throw the ball a good amount. They're going to be able to put up points. What's the total on this game? 52.5. The only thing that scares me about that is I do think Vegas has a better shot to stop this KC defense than I think the KC defense has to stop the Raiders. If the Raiders don't score a ton today, I think it's on the Raiders and probably their play calling, and Derek Carr not playing well. Todd's, I'm cautiously optimistic about the 49ers this week. It's a divisional matchup, and they always seem to match up. We'll get to that game next. It's an interesting one. I definitely want to hit it before we get out of here for sure. Or Vegas plays cover 2 and they aren't good at it. So yeah, crossover. That's what we talked about on Thursday, right? So just because you play, just because you rotate from cover 3 to 2 high safeties doesn't necessarily mean you're very good at it, right? Because if you don't play it well, it can be beat in specific areas of the field. And the thing is Mahomes doesn't like targeting those specific areas of the field whenever you play cover 2. And cover 2 is such a standard coverage. And 2 high safeties is so standard that if you're a safety in the NFL, you better be able to play cover 2. Now, can you get moved out of your spot by the quarterback's eyes and by, guys running across your face and stuff like that into your area? Absolutely. And the Chiefs could do a good amount of that. It's weird to me because I can't see Andy Reid not coming in prepared to this game, but at the same time, it feels like they've never really had they've never dominated the Raiders in a sense of like, hey, we're going to come in and torch you. So I like the Raiders plus 2.5 in this game. I liked them a lot better at 3. Which is what we were talking about on the other day. And I think the Raiders were the one that I said, hey, I'm taking, did I say that? Let me make sure. Yeah. Raiders were the one the other day that I was like, hey, I'm taking this as plus 3 before it moves to 2.5. I think that was one of the games. So yeah. So this is one of my fun games of the day. One of the 4:00 games that I'm going to have on the TV for sure. Probably go back and end up watching some of the other games, but Vegas KC going to be a blast to watch. I have flashbacks to the Raiders playing undisciplined cover 2 that cost them games versus the Dolphins and Chargers last year. That's fair. Crossover. That's very fair. And that's the thing is that's what Gus Bradley has to say. He has to say, hey, you know what? Even though we know cover 2 is the way to do it, is the way to play Mahomes, if they're going to be successful, we can't be disciplined in it, but we're going to be better off in cover 3. We need to stick in cover 3. And the thing is he may also, and this is my plan B for them, right? I think he probably goes to cover 2 for the most part, but I think plan B and probably maybe what ends up being plan A is they mix it up a good amount. They factor in more cover 2 than they have in a long time, but they still stay in their cover 3 in certain situations. The issue is that when you do go into cover 3 or single high safety and Mahomes sees that, that's when he's going to attack you, and you better be prepared for it. You better be prepared for that deep shot because he is absolutely going to take it. So we'll see. Don't think Deshaun Jackson will be heavily involved, but quite like his chances to get a TD. Yeah, I mean, that's the thing, Stu, is with Deshaun, he's the type of guy that will have one catch for 67 yards and a touchdown, or two catches, 90 yards and a touchdown, right? Like that's who he is. Um, and if you can just get him on those deep go routes, the deep over routes where he's going to run all the way across the field, if he gets man coverage, nobody can keep up with him all the way across. Or those deep kind of seam or skinny posts that's going to get him up against the safety. And in the NFL, if you're even, I'm leaving, right? If those safeties even hesitate for half a second and don't stay on top of stay on top of Djax. That was me trying to say Deshaun Jackson and Djax all at the same time. And stay on top of Djax, then there's going to be opportunities, and it often happens that way. So we'll see. I think he's going to be an important part of the offense and being able to lift safeties if those guys are there. And Deshaun Jackson allows them to get some space underneath just by lifting the safeties. I used to always say whenever he was with the Bucks, he may have 2 catches a game. Even if he doesn't catch a touchdown, him lifting the top off the defense and making them just lift higher creates so much space underneath for all the other guys. And that's such a valuable thing, such an underrated thing. Yeah. All right. So I'm taking Vegas in that game, in that particular game. I still believe KC is a good team. I fully believe that Vegas is a good team. Depending on how they play this game this year, I could potentially flip, or this week, I could potentially flip my my opinion on both teams at this point. So I think Waller will benefit from him massively. Yes, Stu, I fully agree with you. All right, we got like 5 minutes to get through this last game, but I do definitely want to go through this. So this is a make or break game for the Rams, right? This is a make or break. They're 3-5 right now, playing against the number one opponent in their, well, 1A, I guess you could say, between the Rams and the Cardinals. I mean, this is, if they lose this week and go to 3-6, they're playing for draft position at this point, right? So for me, we've talked about it. The 49ers don't play in phase. They don't play complementary football between the offense and defense. I think Jimmy Garoppolo, while he was the problem earlier in the year, has played okay in the last couple of games, and he's not necessarily the reason for them losing. If you want to blame Jimmy Garoppolo, you should probably go back and look at the San Francisco defense. 49ers have been horrible on defense. They can't really cover anybody. They can't stop the run. They allow too many chunk plays. Like, it's just bad all around. They can get a good amount of pressure up front from their defensive line, but man, like, they've got to commit too many resources to the front to be able to play this quarters defense, and it leaves way too much space open in the intermediate side of the field, or spots of the field. So for me, just insane amount of opportunity for the Rams on this. I would love to be able to come in and pick the 49ers +4 at home. I think the Rams are just a much better team at this point. And I don't know that San Francisco has an answer on offense for the Rams defense. I think the Rams defense matches up pretty well. Jalen Ramsey is going to be on Deebo Samuel. I'll be interested to see how much they move Samuel around to get Ramsey off of him, because Ramsey doesn't often travel into the slot. Today could potentially be one of those games where they say, hey, you're staying on Deebo Samuel no matter where he goes. Rams do play a good amount of zone. So it's not like you're going man to man on Ramsey and Samuel the entire time. So they'll probably work to get Samuel on different guys. They'll work in the run game to be able to get this fast-flowing defense kind of out of position before they run those misdirections and crosses. Now, here's the thing. I thought they were going to do that against the Colts, And on the 2 drives that they scored against the Colts, that they scored touchdowns, they scored very quickly doing exactly those things. I don't think Shanahan has been awful as a play caller. He hasn't been like magical like he has been in the past, but him not being on his A game in terms of being a play caller, plus Garoppolo not being on his A game as a passer, has detrimental effects, especially when compounded with not having Mostert and speed in the backfield. So a lot of bad things going on for the 49ers. It's weird just because I see a little bit of progress. I don't see enough progress to be able to go in and say, hey, these guys against the Rams are going to be able to pull it off. I think they end up as 3-6, and they've got I'd like to see San Francisco's future schedule because they've got the Rams this week. Look, if they beat the Rams this week, we've got to consider them as still in the race because now all of a sudden they're 4-6. They potentially can get a few wins in their next few games, pull back into at least the wild card in the NFC. And if Garoppolo can't get it done today, I think we're talking Trey Lance time. Like we're starting to get into the point where we know Garoppolo's not the guy. We got to give Trey Lance the opportunity to get some reps in because you go 3-6. Can we see some Gio Bernard today? Absolutely. I think that's a really good point, Sexy, that I didn't mention earlier. That's so Gio against if Washington doesn't openly invite the run, Gio could be a bad matchup against these linebackers. Jamin Davis can't cover him. Landon Collins has a shot, but yeah, if they get Gio out on some linebackers, that's a positive matchup for the Bucks. Does he could end up with a touchdown today? I could see him with a receiving touchdown inside the 10, inside the 20, something like that. I think it's a roll of the dice. If you need to dig deep in the barrel in fantasy, absolutely possible that he could end up having a good day. He hasn't been as big he hasn't been as big in terms of receiving in the offense as a lot of people would like, but I think today could potentially be the day because I don't know that the Bucks are particularly well suited to want to run the ball today, unless Washington invites them to do it. And if Washington invites them, then go for it. All right. So the the Niners have the Rams this week. Then they get Jacksonville, Minnesota, Seattle, Cincinnati, Atlanta, and their next 5. Those are some winnable games. So if they lose today, I don't think I can count them as a win. If they get thumped today, I don't think I can count them as a winner in many of those games. If they come out and they show that they can play well against the Rams, now all of a sudden I'm looking at those games a little bit differently. And because they're going to have to show some additional progress on top of the last week or two that I've seen for the 49ers. And the problem is they've got to play complementary. They can't leave their defense on the field for 40 minutes like they have, right? So, and that's been the problem is their defense has been out there way too much. When Shanahan gets out there and they score quickly. They don't have long sustained drives. They don't manage the clock well, anything like that. And it puts them in some very precarious situations. So I think the Rams are too good of a team. And I think they're going to be too well prepared. They're going to have some adjustment without Robert Woods. Robert Woods is huge in the running game specifically. I think he was top 5 in terms of routes and blocking, meaning he's blocking out in either for his wide receivers or in the running game. And I think he's been top 5 in that. I think he's number 1 in terms of actual run blocking by a wide receiver this year. So that's going to be a huge loss for them. OBJ is not going to give them that in the run game, either in quantity, quality, or even in the wanting to do it. So we'll see how that turns out. OBJ should be in and get some reps this week. I'm curious as to how much he gets. Van Jefferson probably a big part of the thing. Cooper Kupp, obviously. I think the 49ers are going to figure out that they're going to have to, as long as they can take Cooper Kupp away, they'll figure out the rest of it from there. So if they can take that away, we'll see. That and getting pressure on Stafford, which the Titans showed that if you can get pressure in and around his feet, he struggles a good amount of getting the ball out and getting the ball out on time and accurately. So with that being said, I got to take the Rams to cover. I just don't see San Francisco just all of a sudden turning it on this week. Rams -3.5. right now. Yep. Rams minus 3.5. It is an intra-division game, which could be tough. All right, we got 5 minutes. We got to breeze through these last ones. Through our recap here. All right, Baltimore, Miami missed big on that game. I think a lot of people did. I thought Baltimore was just going to run away. Great game plan by Brian Flores. Buffalo, New York Jets. Not a lot to be said here. I am going to take the Jets to cover plus. Wait, no. Did I take Jets in that game? No, I took Buffalo in that game. Why did I write down Jets? Buffalo minus 13 in that particular game. The reason for that is Buffalo, I'm going to take last week as an aberration, just one of those weird games where things were bad. Buffalo tends to thump up on bad teams. There's only 2 games this year where they wouldn't have covered against this particular spread, especially against bad teams. They tend to have really strong games against bad teams. Last week just seems to be an aberration. Carolina defense or Eagles defense? I would go Carolina's defense. I don't trust the Eagles defense at all, especially against the Chargers. Tampa Bay, Washington, taking Washington plus 9.5. I think it's a weird matchup for the Bucks. I thought it was last year. I think it is again. Washington gets Scherf back. I think Washington could potentially get some solid runs as long as they can get to the edges. You don't want to run at Vita Vea. I think they have a good enough defensive line, especially on the interior. Jonathan Allen probably is a problem for the Bucks today, especially if he lines up over right guard instead. I think it's an interesting matchup with the banged up Bucks offense. I think Washington's going to have to play soft in the secondary. Stop that deep throw, invite the run, let it be a Lenny Fournette and Lenny Fournette and Rojo game, and take the ball out of Brady's hands by letting the Bucks volunteer to do that. I think you can keep it close. This is going to be one of those weird games. I think the Bucks could potentially put it on them, but I just don't see the Bucks pulling away. And this being like the Chicago game for them, where they're just up by 30 late in the game. X Griffin, welcome in. Thanks so much. Thanks for the follow. Appreciate it. Glad you're here. Sorry, I'm trying to speed through these quickly so everybody can get to kickoff. Atlanta, I'm taking Atlanta plus 8.5 against Dallas. I still think Dallas is a good team. I've never been fully sold on that defense. I think they do some really good things really well, but I do think that they can be beat, just like they showed that they could be beat last week. Last week was a Murphy's Law game. Whatever could go wrong for Dallas did go wrong, both early in the game, late in the game. I think it was a little bit of an aberration in terms of the overall score, but I do think Denver outplayed them last week and showed that if you have good corners, you could potentially hold this Dallas offense in check a little bit. And if you can get pressure, which I don't know that Atlanta is able to get the same pressure today, but I do think that Atlanta is going to be able to move the ball on offense against the but I do think that Atlanta is going to be able to move the ball on offense against Dallas and probably keep it close, maybe swing a backdoor cover late in the game when Dallas backs off. If Dallas thinks that they can put Trayvon Diggs on Kyle Pitts one-on-one and allow Diggs to just take him out of the game, not going to happen. Pitts is going to win that matchup. So Dallas is going to have some decisions to make on how they want to play on defense, how they're going to want to play Cordell Patterson. But Atlanta has had some offense, and I'm impressed with what Arthur Smith and Matt Ryan are doing right now. Taking New Orleans plus 3 against Tennessee. The reason for that is Tennessee, I was a little bit scared of Tennessee's defense or Tennessee's offense last week. I didn't see them do much. That defense is for real. I think they still have a really good defense today. I think New Orleans counters Kamara being out with some Taysom Hill packages. You should see a good amount of those today, not just him being lined up and, in the slot or whatever it might be. I think Taysom Hill is going to get some more touches that are meaningful today. And that's going to be very, very important. Tennessee is going to have to figure out how to do that, and they're going to get probably some big plays. This to me, I think these are 2 evenly matched teams. I think this to me is going to be up to the coaches who comes in better prepared with more creativity and how they want to approach this game. I think that's more Sean Payton than it is Mike Vrabel. But we'll see. This should be an interesting matchup, fun game to watch for the chess match. Taking Indy minus 10. I think Jacksonville, they played well last week. Josh Allen on the edge had a big game. Love to see his progression. But Indy with a fully healthy offensive line is a different team. I think they're going to be able to run the ball. I think it's going to keep Carson Wentz from going full Wentz. and they should be just fine. -10. I still don't think Indy's a hugely great team. Like I think they're probably middle of the packish, but I think they're good enough to win this by 10, especially at home. I'm taking Detroit +8. I'm actually taking Detroit plus. I took Detroit +8 last on Thursday. That line has obviously moved much closer. It's +5.5. I would still take it at +5.5. Reason for that, I'm calling a Detroit upset today. I think without Big Ben, I think Pittsburgh generally plays everybody pretty close. They just kind of eke out some ugly wins. I think this is Detroit has been eking out some ugly losses, some closer losses against certain teams. I think they match up kind of well against Pittsburgh, and this is the week that they kind of figure out how to get a win. So I'm calling that upset. Detroit taking the W today in Pittsburgh. Cleveland +2.5. I think they're overall a better team than New England. I think New England has some decisions to make as far as how they want to play. And I think if they come in and load the box, I think Baker's going to have some opportunities up top to make some big plays. If Baker plays like he did last week and is able to hit DPJ and Njoku on some big gainers, then it's going to be hard for New England to beat this defense. They're going to have to dink and dunk all over the field because Mac Jones is going to be under pressure. Cleveland's going to play some zone behind it. Mac Jones is probably due for a pick or two, and I think that's potentially going to end up happening in this game. I like Cleveland +2. I like Cleveland to win. I'm surprised that this isn't a line that is in favor of Cleveland. Taking Minnesota +3 simply because they do play very close games. I like the Chargers. I think this game moved to 3.5. Yeah, this game's at 3.5 now. I'm taking that 3.5. I'm giving my extra half point. That's important whenever it's at 3. I'm taking Minnesota +3.5. The reason for that is they play very close games. I think they actually have a solid shot in winning this game, even though I think the Chargers are a better football team overall. I think they have a shot at winning this game because they can run the ball against this Chargers defense, who's last in the league in terms of rush defense. But I do still think the Chargers win this game. I know that's a very tight window with those 3.5 points, but for sure. Man, Arizona -8.5 against my better instincts. I love Carolina's defensive matchup in this game. Arizona's banged up. Kyler Murray not likely to play, not likely to play D-Hop in this game. Carolina's defense can stop this Arizona offense. I like that matchup. The problem I have is, can Carolina generate enough offense? Nothing that PJ Walker has done in relief tells me that he is going to be able to generate any more offense than what Darnold can. So I'm very I my instincts tell me that Carolina covers this. Simply because I do think that their defense probably puts the offense in advantageous situations. I can't bet on PJ Walker to play well against Vance Joseph in that defense. Just can't do it. So I'm taking Arizona minus. I'm going by rule number 2. Never bet against Arizona. So I'm taking Arizona -8.5, even in a weird situation. Philly, Denver. Denver deserves to be favored by 4 or 5 points in this. Really surprised that it's only 1. Give me Denver all day long. I feel like this is probably my lock of the week and one that I may actually end up putting some money on. Seattle, Green Bay -3. Not a particularly interesting game. I know both quarterbacks are coming back, fun and all that. But here's the thing. It's probably going to be a wild game every time both of these teams play. It's pretty wild. The matchups aren't particularly interesting to me. I just think Green Bay overall is just the better team. Wilson probably keeps them in this game overall. But yeah, for me, Green Bay -3. KC, Vegas +3. Taking them in this game. I think Vegas actually ends up winning this game. The question to me is what defense does Vegas play? I think Vegas is going to be able to move the ball in offense however they want to. It's can the Vegas defense play cover 2 like everybody else is doing against Patrick Mahomes in this offense and force them to be patient and potentially create some turnovers? Or do they stick to the cover 3 that they run more than anybody else, and that is their standard-based defense that they run more than 80% of the time, which is a huge margin. I think that they figure it out somewhere in between, probably play a little bit of both, but end up covering the +3 for sure. Rams -3.5. I'm falling out of love with San Francisco. I still think that San Francisco isn't as bad as they've looked, but if they could get if they can get to playing complementary football, I think they become a much better team. I don't think they're 3-5, 3-6 worthy. I think they're probably probably more of like a 8-8, 8-9 type of team. And they're not playing to the level that they could be right now. I think some bad things, some small bad things are happening that are compounding on top of each other. And I just think the Rams are going to be better overall. I think Rams are going to be better prepared in this particular game. Um, and we may see Trey Lance sometime in the near future, because once they get to 3-6, it basically eliminates the 49ers. They do have some opportunities in the next few weeks to be able to claw back to a decent record, but I don't know that they're going to have enough time to do so. All right. Boom. There's your, how many games do we have? Well, we already lost one. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. There's 13 games for this week. Hopefully you go 13-0 on Sunday and Monday. At best, we'll do 13-1 between the whole week, because we did take the L on Baltimore and Miami. But I'm liking these games this week. I'm liking what I'm seeing, feeling like we're getting a better feel for all the teams. So super excited about this week. Hope you guys enjoy. Hope all of your teams are play well today. Hope everybody gets a W. I know that's impossible, but good luck. Most of all, hope all your teams stay healthy, because that's going to be very, very important. All right, everybody. Really, really appreciate it. Thanks, everybody, so much. Enjoy your Sunday. I am out of here. Oh, my mouse just died, which is going to be great. So now I can't actually stop streaming. I guess I'm stuck here with you guys until the mouse charges. I literally can't turn stream off. So if you guys have any questions, I'm going to be stuck here for a little bit. Crossover, appreciate it, man. Thanks so much. Good luck today. Oh, good luck in all your fantasy matchups, too. I literally can't leave stream right now because my mouse died. I knew it would last till the very, very end. I thought it would have like an extra 5 minutes, but it literally died right at the end. Fun. I was gonna find somebody fun for you guys to raid for you guys too, and well, that kind of ruined that, because now I gotta close it up and go get lunch and actually go watch some football games. I don't even know what games are on TV for me to do right now. Um. This will be fun. Oh, okay. All right, I gotta stop. All right, got it. Love you guys. See you next time. How are your fantasy teams doing this year? I was actually just telling the wife, one is in a really good spot. I think I'm in third in one league. I think I'm in third in both leagues. No, maybe fourth in one. But I've had CMC out for a little while, crossover, which has been very, very detrimental to my team. Luckily, I grabbed Cordell Patterson in both of my leagues, knowing that he was going to end up being pretty good. And he's filled in nicely, plays nice in running back or wide receiver position. And I was just looking at my team, and in my 2 tight end team, actually, league. And I now have more players that I want to play every week than I can play. It's not like I'm trying to cover up for one guy that's not playing very well or something like that. I now have guys that I want to play and just not enough spots to play them all. I was telling my wife, I was like, because it's technically her league, and that she was like, "Hey, you want to help me manage this?" And I was like, "Sure." So, yeah, I was telling her, like, if I were in your group chat with all your friends, I'd be talking mad shit because of it. Because I think that right now we're in fourth, but we're gonna end up in probably first by the end of the year, because the team's so good. There's only one other team that's probably as good as we are. So if we get to the second place, we get by in the first round and we're good. And it's the higher money league too, which is nice. So, yep. All right, I've got the mouse working, so I'm gonna jump off of here before it dies again. Appreciate you guys. Have a good Sunday. Looking forward to talking to you guys on Tuesday. And then we got to talk about what our Thanksgiving week. Yeah, CMC being out has been super, super brutal, man. There was I'm glad he's finally back, but I want to see him back at full speed too, which will be good. So we get to talk about Thanksgiving week on our recap stream on Tuesday. So hopefully I'll see you guys on Tuesday. Thanks everybody for coming in. Crossover, have a good one. I will see you guys later.